He's immensely seductive. Quite sure he's right. Obsessionally neurotic. Pretty dangerous, in fact.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
Do you mean you doubt your powers to convince him?
Say it! Say it!
All right, I'll say it.
Worse than that. What I'm afraid of is his power to convince me.
We're talking about putting a manifestly irresponsible man on national television.
Sweetheart, be reasonable.
What? This is the end game.
All right, it is Monday, June 16th, 2025, the 148th day of the Golden Age. I'm your moderator, Chris Paul. Let's be reasonable. I haven't seen you guys in many, many days now. So much has happened. It's like we're in a whole new world. And we've been kind of talking about that for at least a little while, a few years, how we might be seeing a phase change upon the 250th birthday party beginning as it did on Saturday with Donald Trump's birthday, and then a very special anniversary today. Today is our 10-year escalator delta, and the ultimate escalator of all time, Donald Trump, is, it's been 10 years since the Trump era began with the descent from the escalator. And I've got it on here somewhere. So let's get started there with our escalator delta, and then we can get into the rest of it and talk about whether there has been a phase change.
It's great to be at Trump Tower. It's great to be in a wonderful city, New York. And it's an honor to have everybody here. This is beyond anybody's expectations. There's been no crowd like this. And I can tell you, some of the candidates, they went in, they didn't know the air conditioner didn't work. They sweated like dogs. They didn't know the room was too big because they didn't have anybody there. How are they going to beat ISIS? I don't think it's going to happen. That can take the brand of the United States and make it great again. It's not great again. We need somebody. We need somebody that literally will take this country and make it great again. We can do that. And I will tell you, I love my life. I have a wonderful family. They're saying, Dad, you're going to do something that's going to be so tough. You know, all of my life I've heard that a truly successful person, a really, really successful person, and even modestly successful, cannot run for public office. Just can't happen. And yet that's the kind of mindset that you need to make this country great again. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am officially running for President of the United States, and we are going to make our country great again.
All right. So that's quite an entrance into the world of politics. And what he said was that he was going to do a rebranding job on the United States of America. The United States had lost their identity as a great nation in the world, a nation founded on individual liberties and sovereignty and freedom and all of these wonderful American ideals that are part of the American mythology. that we've been raised to believe our entire lives actually represented the American reality, over time, we come to find out that that's not actually true. And so you not only need to change the reality to make it comport to the American mythology and the American ideals, you need to rebrand what's happening so that people's expectations shift. And he has done that spectacularly well over the last decade. The escalator is probably one of the most important moments in American history because it signaled the end of the American decline. And, you know, you can talk about economics or you can talk about culture and this or that and say, okay, it continued declining past that point. That's fine. The spirit of decline was at that point reversed. Okay. Donald Trump immediately began injecting the spirit of comeback, resurgence, greatness, and the rest of it. And the American people over time have come to believe in that brand of Americanism. And that is what we have now. You can think about all sorts of brands. I used to work in branding. We used to deal with celebrity brands. I would have friends that owned, I remember a friend that bought the naming rights, the licensing to old classic American beer brands. And he wanted to change the project a little bit, change the branding on it, and bring back all these old famous names, these great names, these things that we used to know as good and then came to know as not very good. Well, let's make it understood that these things are actually good. And once people understand that, they will agree that these things are good. And we just shift culture. Okay. That's something that companies do all the time. And people get paid a whole lot of money to help companies do that. And Donald Trump just so happens to be the most prominent brand in the world. And he did that. Now he's doing that for America. So in terms of the face change, I think that today's episode of War Room was really interesting. And if you've followed the show for any length of time, you know that I love Steve Bannon. I think that he is way upstream in the information stream from myself or those of us at Badlands. I think that he actually has primary level access to what is going on. And then he is responsible for communicating it to the public in certain ways that allow the process to play out as it's supposed to. If there is an official MAGA story being told, Steve Bannon is the one telling it. Okay. So I think it's incredibly important to watch War Room, which is why I still do after all these years. I'm not saying I still hit every episode, but I'm still there a lot. And I was listening this morning, and considering this is the escalator delta and the first episode after the Flag Day, the president's birthday, the military parade, the 250th anniversary of the Continental Army forming, I thought it was a significant episode. And in the first hour, he comes out with Eric Trump and then Tucker Carlson, and then General Flynn added in later. I haven't gotten to see that part yet. But I want to start out with just a couple of segments of Eric Trump, and then we're going to talk about a little bit of Tucker and just see what this phase change, this shift might be indicating. So this is Eric Trump talking about everything that was done to his father and how his father responded and what he did as far as rhino hunting is concerned.
Open and no, not in our wildest dreams. It actually started, about 2 days before that escalator ride. My father called us all into his office. His office is actually literally 10 feet above my head right now. I'm in Trump Tower, and he called us up there, and he goes, kids, I'm going to do this. Let's do it. And by let's, everything we had ever done, we had always done as a family. And we done The Apprentice. We did the real estate thing. Everything we had always done, we'd always fought together as a family. And he goes, but kids, we're going to get hit harder than you've ever possibly imagined. They're going to attack us in ways that we can't even fathom. And we're going to learn who our true friends were, and I'll never forget those words. And I've uttered them many times, but, I mean, the intuition of the man was incredible. And sure enough, 2-3 days later, he comes down that escalator, and the rest is history. They tried to impeach him twice. They took out, went after Supreme Court justices ruthlessly. The Russia hoax, which you've talked about more than anyone, Steve, the dirty dossier.
Just to be clear, this is quite a long list of psyops, and they are psyops.
The subpoenas. I mean, I became the most subpoenaed person, arguably in American history, as a way to get to my father, right? They couldn't get him in the executive branch, so what did they do? They came after me like I was a dog. They tried to bankrupt our company. They tried to put us out of business. They tried to take him off the ballot in Colorado, obviously in Maine, right? And I mean, they took away his free speech. They took him off of Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. They literally tried to deprive him of his First Amendment right. They tried to kill him twice, coincidentally. And then they had every single ultra left-wing, AG and DA in this country prosecute the hell out of him for doing absolutely nothing wrong whatsoever. And despite that, he gets off that stage, he puts his hand in the air with blood coming down his face, and plenty of other times where it wasn't blood, but, he was battered and bruised, and he goes, we're going to fight, and we're never, ever going to stop, and we're going to fight for this nation, and we're going to get our country back on track. He's the toughest guy I've ever met in my life. He's the greatest father you could have ever had as a person, and I'm so honored. I was probably the first person on that stage with him right when he came down that escalator. There were very few, Steve, at the time. You know that. And by the way, even the ones that were, most of them deserted us in the kind of 2021 years. I've never been more proud to be by somebody's side, to stand on that stage, to fight with a man. And look what he's done for our country. Look what he's done for modern politics. He's become the greatest rhino hunter in the history of the world. I mean, the neocons of the Republican Party are all extinct. And you look at the cabinet that we have now, you look at the way that they're fighting, you look at the things that they believe in, you look at the things that they're doing. Republicans 10 years ago would have thought that none of it was possible because they had lost hope. And we're going to be a better nation for it. So incredibly proud of him, incredibly proud of this journey. And special day.
So he just said that many of the people who were on board with Trump during the first term abandoned them in 2021. Gosh, that's crazy, isn't it? And then he immediately went into talking about how Trump is the greatest rhino hunter in the history of the world, and the neocon Republicans have gone extinct. Well, that's something I've been talking about since 2022, okay? Rhino hunting. Donald Trump, the rhino hunter. Not Donald Trump, the protector of the Republican Party. Donald Trump, the one that makes sure to empower as many people with R's next to their name as possible. Not that. Donald Trump, the rhino hunter, finding all the neocons, all the rhinos, all the conservative establishment who actually don't care about the people. That's what he's been doing now for 3 years. And understanding that that's what he's been doing, and then protecting politicians and protecting media figures, quote unquote, on the right because they're our allies, even though they're not. Well, you are actively working against Donald Trump at that point. We should be trying to determine who the rhinos are and point them out so that they can be removed. And instead, many of the people who identify as MAGA, but are really just establishment Republicans, including many truthers as well, spend their time defending everyone in that establishment because to attack them is helping the Democrats. Okay? Still caught in that controlled opposition dynamic, still caught between these two political parties, not understanding that they're the same thing. And then we protect these people. Eric Trump is saying right there that one of his dad's greatest strengths is his ability to identify, expose, and remove from power these neocons and these establishment rhinos, the GOPE, Con Inc., however you'd like to describe all of those movements. Donald Trump, the rhino hunter, exposes them. And that's what he did in the fake Republican primaries. As I said for a really long time, people told me, you're going to make it so Democrats win. Rhino hunting. 3 years ago, rhino hunting. Now Eric Trump says it. Can it be true now? Have we reached the point where it's okay for that to be true? Let me know. Let me know. I can't wait to hear that it's all right to hold people to the standards you expect them to meet. You know, hey, don't lie to me. All right. Don't spin me all the time. Don't tell me you're my friend and then work against my interests. Don't bar the American people from the public conversation. Don't support their censorship. Don't assume that they're always in the wrong whenever an elite or wannabe elite challenges you. It's not that hard. Let's listen to some more Eric Trump. He was also in the war room today to announce a new Trump organization project. And I want to listen to just a couple of minutes of this. I don't know that we need to go through the whole thing, so I might stop it abruptly. But listen to how Eric Trump describes the need for this new Trump phone or Trump phone service.
Well, Steve, over the last couple of years, we got into really kind of the digital space, right? The technology space. We had to do that. We developed Truth Social. You know why? Because they literally shut down our ability to communicate through censorship, right? Through taking away my father's First Amendment right. And so we developed Truth Social, which allowed us to communicate to the entire country, and it was incredibly successful. Sure enough, you know, as a guy who runs the Trump organization, all of a sudden they started deplatforming us, debanking us. The biggest banks in this country came after us, sent us letters. We had perfect track record, never any problems, had great relationships for 30 years. Sorry, we're canceling all of your bank accounts. The biggest buildings, the biggest hotels, golf courses, gone because they didn't like the fact that, you know, the ultimate owner wore a hat that said "Make America Great Again" and was red. And today we started Trump Mobile, which is going to revolutionize the cell phone industry, and it's going to really shake up the cell phone industry. They've done a terrible job. It's become too expensive. Everything's overseas. We want a product that's made in America for Americans. We want customer service to be in the United States of America, and we're going to bring it back, and we're going to massively disrupt the industry, and I've never been more excited. So when you combine kind of the cryptocurrencies to, again, you know, take on the big banks that otherwise deplatformed us, and those ventures are going so well. When you take on, again, these voice boxes that we have to counter the attacks on our First Amendment right as Americans, and then obviously when you take the hard, tangible product, I think we're creating technology company and as a branch to the Trump organization that I think is really going to be second to none.
Now, are you going to oversee this? Are you going to oversee this venture?
Yeah. Well, we have wonderful partners. Partners that have built some of the biggest cell phone companies, you know, in our nation. You would know the names of every single one of them. And so I'm very involved. I'm very into it. Right. I love the notion of doing this. I love security benefits because, listen, Steve, neither you nor I trust talking on our cell phones at any point. And so that's something seriously we're gonna seriously you know, be running toward in the coming months and years, because that, and then, you know, $47 a month, you've got, you know, free calling, unlimited text to over 100 countries around the world. We're really, really doing this right. And guess what? When you call up because you need service on your cell phone, you want to adjust your plan, you're calling somebody in St. Louis, Missouri. You're not calling somebody in Bangladesh. You're not calling somebody in, you know, in India. You're calling somebody in our country. And I think that's also really important from a security standpoint. I mean, there's not a week that goes by where there's not another data breach because one of these call centers sells, you know, people's personal information. And we saw that last week with a major U.S. company. And so we're incredibly proud of what we're creating, and we're doing it right. Perfect. And it's a made in America product for Americans, and you know, we're honored to be doing it.
Eric, where do people go today to find out more information?
So he's talking about a new Trump Mobile, I guess, cell service, and also they're releasing a phone called the T1 that's going to cost $500. That's half the price of an iPhone, or at least, you know, always the prices they give on the new model iPhones. So that's very interesting itself. Trump Mobile, someone mentioned in the chat, SAS Sprague, S.A. Sprague, I don't know. The new T-Mobile. Yeah, I guess it's kind of T-Mobile. But the interesting thing about T-Mobile is that T-Mobile connects to Starlink. And T-Mobile has always been the pilot cell carrier for Starlink. So is there a possibility while this parallel information apparatus is being built out that we've talked about many times on the podcast, is there a possibility that Trump is going to link to that level? They have an August release date. I have to wonder if we are going to see an extension of the TikTok ban date that would take it out of out of the Apple Store and the Google Store. I wonder if there's another device, another way to get that app, and whether everyone would switch over to specifically be on that app. I don't know that that's what's going to happen. Again, I'm speculating, thinking about what possibilities could arise in the future. But this is a really interesting next step. And he talks, and maybe I didn't capture it there, but Eric Trump talks about winning this war. And he's talking about the information levels of it and the ability to communicate, to transfer funds, and the rest of it. All of these things are things that the Trump organization has been working on, okay? It's not about one of these projects being successful. It might not even be about any of these projects being successful. They are modeling what a company can be in these spaces and how these spaces link together in terms of releasing that next generation of technology. And if we switch the financial system, which seems to be coming from either direction, maybe on one side it's Bitcoin, or I know people are very enamored with gold, but on the other side, we have the threat of CBDCs. And maybe those are just different currencies that give lots of benefits. They're very attractive. They're easier to use at all the places you've become accustomed to. So immediately you'll get onto one of those cryptocurrencies, whether or not it's pinned to Bitcoin. And as long as they over time can acquire all the supply of Bitcoin, well, then they can just fiatize the token on top of that while it's still in some way pinned. So there are potential ways that I'm sure that the global regime has figured out ways that they would like to abuse the system in the future. And they'll be able to do that so long as they can win people over to their option. Okay, that's always the thing. There's an option that doesn't include the regime. The regime gives their own option. It's not as good as the other option, but it has all these different advantages. And yes, they get to control you if you use it, but you go for all the other advantages. And we've kind of been indoctrinated into that mindset and gotten used to it, but it's a bad one. Okay, so you can see these things going in two different directions. It's important to establish not only like a user base and a market, but a lifestyle and a brand around a parallel option. Rumble's been struggling for years to be able to do that. And I don't mean struggling like they haven't been successful. I mean, it's been a struggle at every step of the way. And this is not a Rumble commercial, but I'm just saying, there are these barriers to getting in, and it takes a while to establish and to rebrand and then present finally a better option. And so there's a lot of people that are primarily on Rumble now who used to be exclusively on YouTube. It didn't change overnight, but it changes over time as the brand changes, as the functionality improves, and then we actually have a real option. And we know that there will be networks of people who have also chosen that option. It's not just us taking the new option, taking a stand on our own, anything like that. So, I made the same argument back when Truth Social first came out. Perhaps that would be a bastion of free speech if everything else went down. I still believe that. And I know that Truth Social is not 100% free speech, that the algorithm, it seems like there is some manipulation on how widely posts will spread, okay? There are little blocks put in place. There are times where I'll see people reply to my posts, and in their reply, it'll show my post as unavailable. So I know that there's some weird things going on in the background there. But if everything else collapsed or everything else was obviously compromised, if it became clear to everybody that Twitter actually hadn't changed and was instead just exploiting them with no comment made whatsoever about Elon, it just might be a fact of the situation. well, then people are going to go to a new platform. And we've seen that slowly over time. I wonder if the Trump platform will provide something like that. And as I've suggested for probably 2 years now, I really think that the TikTok thing is going to be linked in to DJT or TMTG as it used to be, the whole Truth Social, the Truth Social universe, like the Marvel Comics universe. I think that's what they call it, right? MCU. I think that's what it is. I don't watch that shit. But anyhow, very cool, very interesting potential signal here for a next phase. Move the information somewhere they can't interfere with it, okay? Whether it's our ability to communicate, our ability to access social media, our ability to transmit funds. These are hugely important things. So I know that the Trump organization and that the gold branding puts some people off. The idea that a president might be starting businesses puts people off. I get it. But Trump's got a better brand than anyone else in all the spaces he's entering. Trump is more trustworthy and more reliable than all of the figures in all of the spaces he's entering. In terms of the social media space, certainly better brand than Zuckerberg, than Elon, than Jack Dorsey and the old group, than Google and YouTube, than Snapchat. Trump's brand is better than all of those. So when it's one or the other, people are going to side with Trump. And we just saw them do that last week when it comes to Trump and Elon Musk. And that's the only one that I think people would even argue about. Is there anybody in the cryptocurrency space who would be trusted over Donald Trump? And I say that with all my Bitcoin maxi friends and myself being something of a Bitcoin maximalist. I think that that's the right solution. There are concerns that I have, but I think that that sounds like the right solution. And I hope that it has a role in the future. I think it's going to. I think we're well past that point. And I think a lot of the nuclear stuff is coding for that. Okay, so I still believe in all that. But if it comes down to Bitcoin or Trump, I'm going to be like, I think it's Trump, And I get it. Bitcoin has the math and all of it. I understand. Okay. I don't need the argument made to me. These are things we have to think about. One of these things has been the greatest catalyst to truth and to awakening that the world has known in 2,000 years. And the other one says it's definitely going to be that. Okay. And maybe it is just the record of the true. We can be hopeful that that's possible and that the ledger will provide that and make all sorts of changes in the world. But right now, you got to stick with the guy who has proven it out there in the world and who has changed society through doing that. So that's where I'm at with the whole thing. Let's go ahead and go to Tucker here, I think. Am I going to Tucker yet? Yes, I am. Okay. So we're talking about this phase shift today, this change. And Eric Trump comes on, and then Eric Trump mentions rhino hunting. And then Tucker Carlson comes on to address the fact that he is not 100% in favor of Israel killing everyone indiscriminately forever if they say they need to. Tucker's not 100% on board with that. And so people got very upset at him over the weekend. And so Tucker came on to discuss that situation. And he talks about Fox News, and he talks about Levin, and of course he talks about himself. But a couple clips from the Tucker appearance. And again, I would recommend highly to everybody to not rely on these clips and to actually go listen to that first hour of War Room. Maybe the second hour, I don't know how long it extended. I was just kind of listening live while doing other things. But here's a bit of Tucker.
Time I covered that war. I had a friend killed in that war.
Talk about Iraq, because Iraq is some of the same voices at the Fox platform
the Fox platform is just, it's so disgraceful. There's so many good people at Fox. I worked for the Murdochs for, all in over 20 years. I always liked them. I like them now. I'm not attacking them personally, and tons of people at Fox are my friends. And there's a lot about Fox that I love. And they were kind to me, always. Even when they fired me, they were nice. I just want to say that. But the one theme that runs longitudinally through the history of Fox is the promotion of wars that don't help the United States. And I don't know
why is that?
It's the owners are committed to that vision, and they are elaborately polite, nice people. You know them, Rupert and Lachlan. I mean, they were sitting here. There's no chance you wouldn't like them, and they're interesting, and they're smart, and they're just nice. They're super nice, but we disagree fundamentally on that. And the claws really come out at moments like this. You know, most of the time it's, it's fine. But when it really comes down to it, when it's a question of whether U.S. military power will be exerted on behalf of a foreign country thousands of miles from here, they are all in, and anyone who stands in the way will be destroyed. I don't think it's personal, by the way. I like Tom Cotton. I always like Barry Weiss. Barry Weiss is a very charming person. I like all these people. I always like Mark Levin. I got along with him. I mean, he's blowhard, sad personal life and all that, but I was never mad at Mark Levin or Hannity. I like Hannity.
Brilliant constitutional guy.
Yeah, there are great things about all these people. I don't think they hate me personally. They know I'm not.
Brilliant constitutional guy. Bannon really seemed like he believes that down deep in his soul. That's the marketing on Mark Levin. He's just a real wonderful constitutionalist.
Working for Qatar. Though I feel like maybe I should be working for Qatar. What the hell at this point? I've never taken a dime from any foreign country or anybody, actually.
In fact, you just bought out, I think it was announced you bought out your investors. So
yeah, I'm not a money guy. I mean, they're projecting. If you could see my house, I've made more money than I deserve, but I've not gotten rich, and I don't live like a rich person. Everyone knows that.
Everyone knows I haven't gotten rich. I mean, yeah, you have, bro. What are you talking about?
They're money people. That's why they're projecting, or they're people with opaque motives. My motives are, I'm autistic about my whole life. I'm totally happy to tell you why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I want to be transparent, and I think pretty much I am. They're the ones who have these weird, complex motives, and so they project onto everyone else the same. Oh,
That's magnificent. I mean, Tucker's ability to argue his purity is unmatched.
You're getting paid by somebody. You're not sincere. You don't really think that. You're saying it in order to get clicks. Or it's also dumb. And in my case, untrue. You may dislike my views, and you may have good reason to dislike my views, and I understand that. But they're totally sincere. Anyway, my temptation in a moment like this is to go low and to note that a lot of the people pushing for this stuff have really empty, tormented personal lives. That's true of many in Washington. And that this is a way to kind of feel powerful. I mean, nothing makes you feel more powerful than killing other people. That's the ultimate power. And we talk so much about money and sex, and those are drivers of human behavior, of course. Those are powerful impulses in people to accumulate more of both. But really the ultimate power, the Promethean power, the core power is the power to kill. And when you deny that to people, or you seek to deny that to people, or you raise the point that actually you can't kill people, and that when you do, you will suffer for that. As you said the other day, and I loved it. I meditated on it in that moment in Matthew. And it's not just in Matthew. It's in John. It's in a number of Gospels where Jesus scolds Peter for raising the sword in his defense. They're hauling off Jesus to torture him to death for no reason. All he did was heal people. And his closest disciples seek to defend him with violence, and Jesus scolds him and then gets hauled off to be tortured. By the way,
they could have made a break. They would have stood up, and Jesus wouldn't have been seized, and it would all gone on. But he told him right there, live by the sword, die by the sword.
And he scolds him. It's unbelievable. He's mad at Peter. It's just incredible. Anyway, whether or not you...
So there's a lot there from Tucker Carlson, and we're going to get into a bunch more of this later on when we talk about Israel, but he's making many of the points that I made over the weekend. And if you were following online or on Substack, Truth Social, Telegram, etc., even when I am not making shows, I'm still on there. And lately I have still been producing some writing too. So if you're not following the Substack, I'm your moderator.substack.com. You should. T.me/very reasonable is on Telegram, and all the information will be up there every day. Okay. It's not about that stuff only being available when I'm doing shows. That stuff happens all the time. I could not do a show for a month and there would still be more content available on there than you would probably see from anyone else. I don't know anybody who produces content at the rate that I do, even when I'm not doing shows. Okay, but that is not the point. It's not to talk about me. Just saying that on times where, like this, where I'm off for 3 days when I wouldn't normally be, you can just simply find me over there. And so, all right, so Tucker somehow declares himself not rich and the most transparent and authentic person who ever existed. This is kind of just how Tucker brands himself. And, you know, you can decide for yourself whether or not you think that's true. Tucker might be one of the greatest improv actors of all time. He could be running an info op. I assume that he's running some info op. He could be running an exclusively good info op that was set up for this exact moment to come out and be the Fox News guy, the guy who is just accepted as on our side, who finally tells our side, hey guys, you can't just keep watching Fox News and agreeing that we've got to kill people. And so now he said it. I've been saying these things for a very long time, and Tucker has too as well. So I was just reiterating, like, I know you guys have heard this spiel from me before. But deciding who to kill should be like one of the things we think about the most carefully. One of the things we are the most thoughtful about. And instead, we watch the television, we get mad at what we saw on TV, and then we determine that indiscriminate killing is just fine for as long as it takes for people not to feel threatened anymore. I'm going to come back into some of that later, but he's taking it right to Fox News, right to the Murdochs, right to the neoconservatives generally. And then here he is going off on Mark Levin.
Levin's the funniest because he's terrible on TV. And again, I never had any problems with him at Fox. He kind of controls Hannity in this weird way. I never understood what that was about. I never really cared to learn. Sean was great to me, always nice, and so was Levin. So I just kind of stayed away. But they didn't want to put him on TV because he's like screechy and he's just not a calming presence. Mark Levin on TV, like, oh my! Unless you're literally floating in and out of consciousness and the attendant has taken the remote to go have a cigarette, you're gonna flip the channel when Mark Levin gets on TV. It's like listening to your ex-wife scream about alimony payments. It's like not appealing. So they wouldn't put him on TV. And then, you know, Sean pushed and they gave him some kind of weekend show that nobody watched. Now I don't have a TV.
Can we just go back to that for a second? He essentially describes Mark Levin as very bad at television. There would be no reason to give him a television show. He sort of handles Sean Hannity. And then Sean Hannity pushed for Levin to get a television show on Sunday nights. And then just recently, Fox News has taken Levin, despite his no real popularity, and put him on primetime every night throughout the week so that he can give his Israel spiel.
It's like listening to your ex-wife scream about alimony payments. It's like not appealing. So they wouldn't put him on TV. And then, you know, Sean pushed and they gave him some kind of weekend show that nobody watched. Now I don't have a TV, but someone was just who owns a TV was just telling me that he's like all over prime time. So what is that? That's not by popular acclaim. That's not like their viewer surveys. Like, you know, we need a lot more Mark Levin. Less Jesse Waters, more Mark Levin. Mark Levin! What they're doing is what they always do, which is just turning up the propaganda hose to full blast and just trying to, you know, knock elderly Fox viewers off their feet and make them submit to a new war.
Is it believable when Tucker says it? I know it's not believable from me in 2022. I know that me in 2022, I was a traitor to the Republicans. I was going to make it so that we couldn't win the fake midterms. We weren't going to get the red wave if people talked about not voting. Then we didn't get a red wave because elections are stolen. And all of the people he's talking about came out immediately after the midterms and said, all of that is Donald Trump's fault. The MAGA candidates didn't win. The MAGA supporters cost us this election because they talked about election fraud. And they went along with all of it. All of it. One more from Tucker. Here we are.
I really love Trump. I think he's a deeply humane, kind person. And I am saying this because I'm really afraid that my country's going to be further weakened by this. I think we're going to see the end of American empire, obviously. Other nations would like to see that, and this is a perfect way to scuttle the USS America on the shoals of Iran. But it's also going to end, I believe, Trump's presidency and effectively end it. And so that's why I'm saying this.
What do you mean by that? That's coming from you. That's
you get. Look, I knew Bush. I knew George W. Bush. We had, family connections to Bush. I knew Bush personally. I still see Bush sometimes, and of course, he hates me, and he does because I criticized him on Iraq, and that war is the sum total, from a historical perspective, of his administration. But I knew him, and he had all kinds of plans for the things that he wanted to do. But once domestically, right, to improve the country.
Right.
And you may agree or disagree, but in his mind, he wasn't just about the invasion of Iraq in March of 2000.
Oh, no. He was going to redo Social Security.
100%,
He had all types of. He was going to take care of the entitlements issue.
And he really thought it was going to work.
Yep.
And you could laugh at that or whatever, but the point is, the second you get enmeshed in a real war, not a fake, let's go bomb the villagers and declare success, though we don't even have a good track record. Why are the Houthis still there?
No,
there's a whole other question,
right,
which is how prepared is the U.S. military for a real conflict? And the answer is totally unprepared. Scary unprepared. I don't think people understand that. But anyway, the only reason I'm saying any of this is because I really, really care.
He does care a lot. Trump also cares a lot. He noted that Trump is sincere about his desire for peace. He's also suggesting that if America becomes embroiled in this foreign conflict, it will essentially and effectively be the end of the Trump presidency. He will not be able to accomplish any of the other goals. So what then is the regime's motivation above all else? Getting Trump entangled in a foreign war so that he can't achieve any of his goals, so that people are not on his side, so that he loses the base, as we've been told would happen over this past week. Isn't it incredible how well that story works when you see that the neocons have been pushing it for all of this time? Just the need for a war. Make it impossible for Trump to focus on anything here, or for the American people to focus on anything Trump is doing. Instead, it's round the clock Israel. That's insane. And that's right where we are. Okay. So Eric Trump talks about rhino hunting. Tucker Carlson comes on and talks about Fox News, specifically Mark Levin, in addition, the Murdochs. And he was very nice and very kind and very gracious to all of these people. He made fun of Mark Levin a little bit. And I know that's going to hurt your feelings. But for the most part, he made sure that everybody knows he doesn't hate these people. He's not mad at them. He's got no problem with them whatsoever, except they just really, really love war. And they love convincing Americans that we should go kill everybody based on issues that aren't real, based on stories they tell on their little TV programs as they are disseminating the messaging of the military-industrial complex and global intelligence agencies. And it has always been the case. And it is up to us as supporters of Donald Trump, as people who may well be a little bit ahead of the game compared to our peers out in the normie sphere, understanding what's going on in the future, or at least what's going on right now, or what it means in a greater context, any of it. The idea that we should be supporting going to war for Israel with Iran, backed by Russia and China. What are the neocons doing? And so what are we seeing here? We saw the military, and we're going to get into this in a minute. We saw the military get Trump's back this weekend. They had this massive parade. Trump swore in new troops. The optics on everything were wonderful. There are some reviews out there that suggest that that the parade didn't look as spectacular as the Russian military parades or the Chinese military parades. And on some level, that's probably true. But it's not about like that particular look. The military's not, that's some sort of abstract power projection. We look like we're a great military because we are perfect in all of these, in executing all these formations, marching perfectly, showing off this equipment in a way that makes it look grand and spectacular. This is a very stripped down version of this, but I'm not sure that this version is worse. Okay, that might be visually appealing to certain people from a certain perspective. Okay, the Nazis were very good at that thing too, for that matter. But this was scaled down. It was a little bit more American. There were families around the parade route watching this whole thing happen, and I think that was important. Let us go to some of that. Sorry, I was editing on the fly. Let's go to some of that military parade business. So again, I've been talking about this and what it is going to mean since March of 2023, when Trump first announced that there would be a 250th birthday celebration. The fact that it is happening at the same point, Trump's birthday, the 250th anniversary of the formation of the Continental Army, Flag Day, and now we have the escalator delta just 2 days later. I don't think any of that is a coincidence, okay? And that would then suggest that I think they probably intended to do all of this back in June of 2015 and planned the coordination of those dates back then as well, all right? Yes, I do think it's that coordinate, okay? Even if it's only the messaging op and parts of reality are still totally spontaneous, random, and organic. Even if that's the case, the communications op could all be planned in advance. And we see signs all the time that we are being communicated to about something that happened a while ago, being told that it's just happening now so that we finally pay attention. That's the purpose of the reruns that we've talked about a number of times. So let's get to some of the footage from the parade over the weekend. Let's see here. Hold for processing. We're almost there. I have this lined up, but there's so many clips today. It's crazy.
Daniel Boone and Abraham Lincoln in their ranks. After the 9/11 terrorist attacks, Rangers were called upon to lead the way in the global war on terrorism. As part of the U.S. Army Special Operations Command, the 75th Ranger Regiment, based out of Fort Bragg, North Carolina, represents a lethal, agile, and flexible.
So I guess that they needed to have like the straight-legged, like goose stepping sort of thing in order to be taken seriously by the people who had a problem with this parade. But I think that's just fine. And it looks like Donald Trump thinks that's just fine. You could see him saluting there. One of the interesting aspects of the parade was that they had the public address announcer at the parade. That audio was playing through. And so the television audience was able to hear the little synopsis of the unit that was walking past the grandstand there and giving some of the history from a certain perspective. And I can't say that I agreed with the historical perspective of how everything was presented, but it was, I guess it could be called the patriotic version of the official story for the most part. But it's good to see the Army in these various stages, and that's what we were brought throughout. Let us continue. As I said, families were lining the streets outside. This was a pretty spectacular capture here. the American people supporting the American military. Young kids in fatigues. Maybe they're going to be military men someday. Totally excited about what they're seeing in front of them. Then they realize that they're on like the Jumbotron at a baseball game type of thing and get even more excited. The whole time there's rock and roll music playing instrumental versions of Barracuda and War Pigs and Enter Sandman. That's not your pretty military parade. That is like the most American thing imaginable, I guess. Like the military vehicles driving through Washington, D.C., the American people on either side, the president up there, and the troops just going through while rock and roll plays. If that's not Americana, I don't know what is. And if that sort of thing doesn't make you happy and you want one of those pretty parades, I guess you can find those in other countries. Maybe one day we'll have one, all the pomp and circumstance of it. But I think that this was just fine. I think those Russian parades look cool. I think those Chinese parades look cool. I get it. I even love Little Rocket Man hanging out with his hot tub monkeys. Looks cool. Totally. But this is more American, and maybe we should just stick with that. Let's continue. Polymath Anon says they should have played Hope's Fall. Yes, they should have played Hope's Fall. Everybody should play Hope's Fall all the time because that band is fantastic. Just saying. There's also another fantastic band that I got to see last week. They're called Brand New, and they've been around for 22 years, so they're not brand new. But they are one of the most spectacular rock bands I've ever seen. And I've been to thousands of concerts, so I was blown away by it. And so thank you for bringing up fantastic music. I agree that there should be more of it. This image was striking, to say the very least. The robot dogs were shown off, as were some flying drones. And of course, the whole thing was filmed by drones. But that there is a robot dog that you may have seen before in your nightmares or on the show Black Mirror or in the video games, the Division video game series, which is actually about New York and Washington and, well, the United States of America generally, falling apart in the wake of a pandemic where people split off into factions, and those factions are essentially just vying for territory and control throughout the game. And it's a phenomenal game. I don't know if you're into video games, but if you are, the Division series is incredible. Anyhow, in that series, there were robot dogs trying to shoot you. And, of course, you had to shoot them first and blah, 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 disrupt their electronics and all that. But anyhow, there is your dystopia marching down the street. Let's hope that thing is only unleashed on America's enemies and not the American people at any point. But then again, you have to remain cognizant of the fact that no matter how much Trump is a part of this display is also happening outside of Trump. And this display may have been scheduled to occur whether or not Trump was in the position he's in now. And so what could that have meant if it was already planned and scheduled? It could have been planned and scheduled by the good guys. That's entirely possible. It also could have been planned and scheduled by the regime, believing that they would have one of their people back in the presidency. And this military parade could have been this grand event that gave America the oomph it needs to get into that war that just started in Israel on, I think, Friday the 13th, by the way, was Israel's attack of Iran technically on Friday the 13th local time. I just want to make sure about this because, yeah. So What in the world? It's so funny that they just change. You can't see what's happening with the AI right now, but they basically took my question, hallucinated it into a different question, and have given me an answer on that. So hold for processing for just another second. Amazing. Although they do say that, yeah, that's not a Friday the 13th. Yeah, so the airstrike was indeed on Friday the 13th in Iran's time zone. So there you have that. Let us continue. So Donald Trump, I think that this was one of the absolute best moments of the entire event. He swore in new soldiers. And I think that this is really important because of the backdrop, the American people behind it, the American people watching. Donald Trump is here. If you understand what the war is, the war that he's actually fighting, okay? Donald Trump is not anti-war. He is just anti-neocon, fake MAGA war and fake war. He's fighting the only war that matters, which is the good twin, evil twin war, this information war of which this is part. And so an event like this is showing to the world and to the enemy, the American military is with us. And he's reminding the country exactly the oath all of these people take.
President, First Sergeant Norton, reporting for duty, sir.
Sorry.
The ceremony as directed.
I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I will obey the orders of the President of the United States and the orders of the officers appointed over me according to regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So help me God. Congratulations. Congratulations. Welcome to the United States Army, and have a great life. Thank you very much. Have a great life. Thank you.
That's quite a moment as far as I'm concerned. I think that that is meaningful beyond just the event as displayed. I think that we are entering a new phase. And I think it's important that the world understands the U.S. military is firmly behind Donald Trump. And that's especially important because of the dynamics playing out in the global regime. Various factions trying to get rid of Trump, trying to pull Trump into an impossible situation, trying to get the American people back on the same page so that they are willing to comply. And that compliance would eventually be used for removing Trump and removing the MAGA ideal and allowing the global regime back in to do whatever it is they want for all time. And I think that they're still working down that path, trying to subvert Donald Trump so that they can ride out these 4 years and take control back. This is J.D. Vance. He, for some reason, gave a speech. I don't know why they have him say things, but here we go. He's being down home J.D. Vance. The J.D. Vance who he was identified to be by the book written by someone who isn't J.D. Vance called Hillbilly Elegy. And if you don't believe me that that book was A, ghostwritten, and B, total bullshit, read the book. Read the first 3 pages, and you'll be like, oh, this definitely is not true. It's incredible. But here is J.D. Vance trying to sound like he didn't go to Yale.
And so to our soldiers, we're so proud of you. And let me tell you that the way that we honor and respect you is, number one, we never ask you to go to war unless you absolutely have to. And number two, when we do ask you to go to war, we give you the weapons and the support needed to kick the hell out of the enemy and come back home safely.
Oh, gosh, he sounds so butch. He sounds so strong. We're going to kick the hell out of the enemy. That's what we're going to do. We're going to give you all the weapons you need to go kick the hell out of the enemy. I'm J.D. Vance. Yeah. Oh, man. So he says he's not going to send the U.S. military to war unless they absolutely have to go. Except the thing is, they have to obey the chain of command and they have to do what the president says. So they have to go anytime they are sent. They don't have a choice. That's how the system works. Okay. But the idea is that we're only going to send them into war if it's absolutely necessary. But what war is absolutely necessary? A war to protect the homeland is necessary. Going around the world to help overthrow governments on behalf of Israel, on behalf of the global regime, that's not necessary. That's never necessary. But people around J.D. Vance certainly want that to happen. And again, we'll get into more of that stuff later. The end of the ceremony was rather spectacular, as one might expect from a Donald Trump production, remembering the rallies, remembering the event at Mount Rushmore on July 3rd of 2020, that celebration against that backdrop, the opera singer following his return to Butler. Trump goes big on these events, and he did it again on Saturday night. I mean, that's spectacular. That is incredible optics. That's what this event is for. I did an episode on this concept, this principle, after the speech before the joint session of Congress. Gosh, remembering that ridiculous phrase seems like more effort than it's worth. But we talked about how there are optics-only events. This is an optics-only event, okay? Essentially nothing happened. We had a parade, but the entire thing was a display of optics. Optics of Trump swearing in the military. Optics of military might. Optics of military technology. Optics of American involvement and backing for their military. All of this is optics. Then the grandeur of the Trump presidency and everything it represents. The grandeur of America, the fireworks, the music. It's gorgeous. That's an incredible job done in terms of creating an image and pushing that brand forward, as he talked about 10 years ago. Let me see where we are headed next. Let me just bring this up to you quickly. Short one, but I thought this was another cool display. Incredible optics. Incredible optics. I don't know, honestly, how people could have a problem with that or try to nitpick the marching. It's pretty silly. I mean, we're not another country. We're America, okay? Being American is the good thing. We can just allow ourselves to be American and not worry that we're not being European enough. I remember one of the most annoying things in Los Angeles was how many people there wanted to pretend that they were sophisticated Parisians. Unbelievable. We're not sophisticated Parisians, okay? We're Americans. We can act like Americans. This is MSNBC trying to wrap their heads around what they saw.
One thing I will say, I want to go back to you, Ali, that again, when we talk about this sort of tension in the country, and sometimes, you know, you and I have both been at Trump rallies, those can be, you know, very tense, a kind of, I would say, like kind of a dark, malevolent energy sometimes in them. Not always, but it doesn't seem like that's the energy on the mall today, which I think is a good sign, right?
Correct. That you're really correct about that, Chris, and it's something we were watching for. Yeah. I'm just sort of surprised by the number of people who were at the front of the parade, watching, cheering, and then would come and ask to take a selfie. Yeah, right. This is a very different mood here. Yeah. People seem to be going out of their way to say that they're here to celebrate the Army's 250th birthday. Now, there are people walking around with signs. A moment ago, while you were talking to Jen, guy just came around and said, Trump 2028. And I said, how does that work exactly? And he's like laughing and had a big flag on him. So there's some politicization here, but it is not, it's not dark. It's not tense. It's not amped up. It's different. It's different from covering a Trump rally.
So not a dark, malevolent energy at the parade. Well, that's reassuring. So it had the exact same energy as J6, except for the violence that was started by people who weren't MAGA. Isn't that incredible? They can't figure out what's going on with Trump 2028. That's supposed to be an example of how the MAGA supporters are still trying to tear down our democracy, even though there's nothing dark or malevolent and there's nothing violent happening anywhere. They're still trying to tear down our democracy because they want Trump to keep being, quote unquote, president when he's, king. Oh, man. So they're having a hard time dealing with that situation. I am, for one, very, very sad on behalf of the MSNBC people. One last thing about the parade. Donald Trump had an interesting comment yesterday talking about how the weather was supposed to be bad, and instead it was just fine.
It's a tremendous success with a fantastic audience. It was supposed to rain. They gave it a 100% chance of rain, and it didn't rain at all. It was beautiful. And so I asked if they gave it 100% chance, right? 100% it was going to rain like crazy, and it didn't rain at all. How do they predict 100 years out and 50 years out or 200 years out? They didn't do too well, the weather people, last night, but it was beautiful. It's a tremendous success with.
So the weather people, they didn't do too well last night. Somehow they got the weather totally wrong. They kept saying there was going to be a 100% chance that something bad would happen and the parade would just not go off as planned. But nothing bad happened. And that's so interesting because you saw Trump there behind the bulletproof glass throughout. The entire gallery was shielded by that bulletproof glass, which, you know, we've seen before. We saw on January 6th and the rest of it. Was there any reason to believe there could be an attempt on Trump's life? I guess we just have to assume that at every outdoor gathering at this point. We also had a political assassination, quote unquote, story, at least, that morning. I'm not telling you the story's real or it's fake or anything about the story. Don't really care about the details. It's a political assassination story by the No Kings killer appointed by Governor Walz. So if anything were to happen to Donald Trump that evening after that story went out on the day of the well-publicized No Kings rallies / riots, whatever they were, well, that story's not going to work because it's already, the guilt for political assassinations on that day is already attributed to the No Kings people. Okay. So an interesting informational disruption. Now, I don't know if anything would have happened otherwise. And I don't know that that's what Trump is alluding to. Maybe they just took the weather weapon away from the regime and that's all there is to it. But I thought that was really an interesting comment. They've been saying for 25 or 50 or 100 years what the weather is going to be, and they got it wrong. And they couldn't even get it wrong yesterday. So why would you ever believe them about their long-term predictions? Interesting stuff. Okay, let's take a brief break. I'm just going to do an ad for Rumble and then check the chat and see how you all are doing. So this is for 1775 coffee. If you haven't tried it yet, you can still get one of their 1775 starter kits. You're getting the bold dark roast that hits harder than a CNN fact check, the smooth medium roast, and the Vitality Mushroom Coffee for clean energy and laser focus, no crash. All single origin, small batch, toxin free, mold free. Plus, you're also getting a gold spoon clip because freedom isn't scooped with plastic. A frother strong enough to stir up your coffee and your mother-in-law's political opinions, and a black 1775 tumbler that says, I don't take life advice or caffeine from a woke sea witch. $170 worth of coffee and gear, yours for $99. This is for the ones who've been watching 1775 blow up on Rumble, wondering if it's actually worth it. Spoiler alert, it is. Go to 1775coffee.com/studio and grab your starter kit before they're gone. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something, just like Rumble does. Start your day with coffee that actually backs what you believe. All right. We got through that just fine. Seems like everybody in the chat is doing okay. Checking in on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. Checking in on Substack. Hello, Substack. Good times. Good times had by all, it seems. Or maybe not. But if you are having a good time, hit thumbs up or whatever. That stuff, at least theoretically, could help. I don't know that it does help, but I know that theoretically it could help. And that's similar to helping. So let's talk for a little bit about the No Kings thing, and hopefully this won't take too long, and then we will get into Israel. This is from The Atlantic. You'll never find a better display of commie photos from that event than you will on theatlantic.com. So here you have demonstrators on Dolores Street in San Francisco, the #1 most rallying for commies place in the country, comes out with at least, I don't know how many people are here. I would estimate a few thousand, a couple thousand, 2,000 or 3,000 people in this crowd that you can see right here. It doesn't seem to stretch any further back than that in the street, as you can see. They also have the trees framing how big this is. There's some people out on one side. Maybe that is more, but There are American flags hanging upside down. Okay. Pretty sure these flags are hanging upside down. I was told that anyone who does that is an insurrectionist. And I was told that that even includes the wife of Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito. I guess different standards for different folks. We have a number of handmade signs, some with the F word on them because it's not a commie protest if they don't make clever signs that swear. Impeach Trump, says this sign. History has its eye on us, says this one. And then we have a paid for and produced sign. The People United will defend immigrant families. And it looks like it says Party for Socialism and Liberation. That's who created that sign about defending immigrant families. The Party for Socialism and Liberation. This is at the Iowa State Capitol. Sorry that happened to you, Iowa. Here we have a very special design. Look at that. We've got the colors of the rainbow over the top. It says no king in people, then a flag, and it all looks like a home base or something. And this was in Ocean Beach, California, I guess, related to the ICE actions in San Francisco. They're telling us each place they go, there was a different ICE action there that must be protested. Now, this looks like a pretty big display, but I can't imagine that there's even more than 1,000 people involved in this. Whatever, imagine the coordination and planning it took to get this and then execute it on the ground. This stuff is so stupid and so lame, but they have to make their special images that will last for all time. Oh, this is going to be a historic image. This is when we homosexuals stand it up to have no king in America. More people marching. This guy looks unhappy. Extremely liberal. These are actually middle-aged people, some of them wearing masks, many of them wearing masks, but they're considerably younger than what some of these other pictures show. This is, I guess, a Where's Waldo of communists. I guess you're supposed to seek out the biggest commie in this photo. Could take a while, but when you find it, scream Waldo. Here is Cincinnati, a march of a few hundred people with very lame commie signs. This is at the Capitol. Look at this insurrection. The capital of Idaho, I should say. This is, man, I don't know, 5,000 people. I have some knowledge of what these numbers generally look like from having produced so many public events before and having operated at so many bars, restaurants, and nightclubs with their capacities, venues for concerts, etc. You kind of get a sense when you're paying attention to it over years, how many people are in a given area. So these are the biggest events they had. Charlotte, North Carolina, all of these large urban areas. They were able to get their people out in some of these places. Here we have Putin grabbing U.S. by the pussy, and the pussy in that case would be Donald Trump. Ukraine flags. Stop Project 2025. So scary. Gay flags. Incredible. Some old politician yelling through a megaphone while communists with rainbow flag pins watch. Don't let him toy with us. Look at that. Donald Trump just playing with his military men and his tanks and his planes. These people are just such degenerates, and it's incredible. The Boston Pride Parade has a No Kings rally next to it. Isn't that amazing? The Pride Parade and the No Kings thing combine into the same events. It's really for the Pride Parade, but now we've got No Kings. So all of this is against Donald Trump. Isn't that amazing? The communists even hijack the gays' gay communist events. That's hard. ICE equals Gestapo, MAGA equals Nazis. No, that's not it at all. The FBI equals Gestapo. Antifa equals Antifa and the brown shirts. And the global regime are the same Nazis that they were 100 years ago, or, 90 to 80 years ago. It's important to be exact about these things. I want you to resist, says Uncle Sam. Yes, one thing Uncle Sam would have definitely cared about is people resisting. Not that Uncle Sam was necessarily a real person. People resisting the implementation of the exact agenda that was sold to the American public and widely approved of. Oh, gosh, Uncle Sam would have such a problem with this. Now, I don't know what this is. Some sculpture made out of deer horns. Deport Trump to Russia. Maybe this is just soft war comms right here in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Literally one of the richest places anywhere. This screaming lady, she's crushing it. Maskies everywhere. Moms against man babies. I don't know. I hope that I'm not spending too much time on this, but I think it's hilarious. There is, of course, the Trump blow up doll. Trump's just a fat, screaming, floating something, whatever. These people are crazy. No kings, and they throw up a commie fist right here on the sign. There should be no confusion whatsoever about what all of this is. Oh, look, they're standing up to these military men. This is the man trying to keep the voice of the people suppressed. You got to understand what the optics are for. How about that? Marching down a street in Los Angeles. This must be the shittiest part of Los Angeles. I don't even know what street this is. It looks like the area between Koreatown and downtown LA. It's not a very pretty stretch, but it could be just part of downtown LA or East LA. You see the DTLA sign right there. Cell phone stores. We got the old Sprint sign and the old AT&T sign. And I don't know, that's a few thousand people in LA, one of the most commie places on earth. And here you have actors Mark Ruffalo and Susan Sarandon. Susan Sarandon looking like a wet dog, and Mark Ruffalo looking like the retard that he is. I mean, that guy is retarded. I used to have some mutual friends with him back in the Bernie days, and they were all Bernie bros. They were very, very upset. But they and Mark Ruffalo used to do all these little things together, being Bernie bros. And of course, then they moved right into utter Trump derangement. And the Bernie bro thing is kind of interesting because a lot of them were people who thought that the Great Awakening was beginning in 2012. Maybe it did, by the way. They might have been right about that. And then they thought that Bernie Sanders was the Great Awakening guy. Bernie Sanders has not woken up anyone. How can you wake someone up as a career communist? His career was being a communist politician for 60 years. On the public dole, as they say. So there you have it. The Atlantic gives you the feel of the No Kings rallies. Is that what the No Kings rallies really were? Should we believe that that many people came out to protest ICE and to protest Trump while knowing that those were gay pride parades? Let's see what other ways we could conceive of the No Kings rallies. And by the way, I saw a video. I didn't pull it for this, but I saw a video the other night where one of the MSNBC reporters, who looks exactly like Rachel Maddow but identifies as a man, he was in Los Angeles. They talked about how 20,000 showed up for that rally. Now, I doubt that there were 20,000 there, but 20,000 in Los Angeles, if that's your maximum, does not get you millions of people around the country coming out to protest ICE and protest Donald Trump. That is a flop by any standard because people don't care about that. Okay? Normal people don't care about that. They're not going out there and rally. And by the way, I don't consider people who are still Trump deranged in 2025 to be normal people. And I understand that people I care about also still are Trump deranged. And that is very, very sad. But that is a subnormal understanding of what's going on in the world. And it is a focus on this one individual who is a stranger who you hate because the TV told you to hate him. And if you can't get past that, then you're not functioning on all levels. And I would tell that to those people that I do care about. And if they see this, hey, I still care about you. I want you to get better. But come on, you hate Donald Trump. You don't know him. Most of your principles align with him. The things you say you want are the things that he's doing. And you're going to protest him over an issue you don't know anything about. How strange is that? So it was predominantly a flop, but let's get some of the real flavor. What happened in these rallies? Well, we were told last week that Randi Weingarten of the teachers unions was somehow the head of the No Kings thing. Here she is. And remember, by the way, they got 180, I think. That's the number I read, but well more than 100 commie organizations together, all of their email lists, all their data, all their marketing that they've ever done. They send this stuff out to absolutely everybody so that they have totally blanketed with marketing anyone who is a Democrat, whoever was a Democrat, Green Party, Libertarians, anybody who has ever signed up or been interested in any of these organizations. Every one of them gets told, you got to go to this No Kings rally. And somehow Randi Weingarten of the teachers union is at the front of this. Let's see how she handled her big moment in the spotlight.
You are the community to this president's chaos. And together we build a future of opportunity and justice for all. Hope over fear, aspiration over anger, the promise of America for each and every American. That is what we are fighting for today.
That lady is so disturbed and in so much trouble. I mean, what in the world is that? That is desperation and panic. She is saying nonsense things, jumping up and down, trying to give her speech emphasis and passion. But it's totally inauthentic. She looks like she's trying to say something important. These people are crazy. Let's keep going, though. That's not all the fun. Let's go to this Leah Greenberg person who is one of the two people behind No Kings, or behind 5051. I think it's behind Indivisible. I'll look that up while this plays.
Rally for one party. We've got Democrats here today. We've got Republicans and independents here today. We're looking to the leaders who will fight for us, because even today there are folks among the Democratic Party who think we should roll over and play dead. Anyone seen John Fetterman here today? We're not looking to politicians to save us because we have been disappointed before we are looking to each other.
Yeah, well, you're not looking at that many people, Leah Greenberg, and that's the problem. And I was right. She was from Indivisible. Who is she speaking to? Who is going to listen to that? This shrill little woman screaming about this false reality that she exists in. Okay? They believe that Donald Trump is what they actually are. Okay, he's the bad guy. He's the authoritarian. This is tyranny. This is autocracy. All of those things. He's a king. That's what they are. That's what they represent. They represent a centralization of everything and control by a very small number of people at the top. And maybe there's one ultimate controller, but maybe not. The problem is we only see things to certain levels. We see things to the level of president of a country. because that's what the TV says the highest level is. This president is dealing with that president. Trump is speaking to Macron. Trump is at the G7 meeting these other presidents, and they're going to decide what's happening in the world. But they're not going to decide what's happening in the world. Maybe Trump is. Maybe some of these leaders have some sovereignty and some power on their own, but the rest are all serving a global regime agenda. And they don't have power. The power actually exists levels higher than them, but those levels remain opaque to us on purpose so that we believe things are being handled at the presidential level. And then if Donald Trump isn't doing the things that the regime wants or that have been done before, then Donald Trump becomes the anomaly. He becomes the one who's trying to take all the control for himself just because he's implementing an agenda that conflicts with their agenda. That also just so happens to be backed by the overwhelming majority of the American people. He's not violating the Constitution. He's comporting to even their Constitution, as well as the old one. So how does he become labeled as the king? And let me pull this up. I posted about this on Truth Social yesterday, and I meant to snag that. But the king's thing is a very strange dynamic. There's also, I didn't drop this meme either, but there's a fantastic meme out there about how it's Trump and Putin, and Trump's like, I can get Democrats to call me king on my birthday. And Putin's like, no way, you can't do that. And Trump's like, watch me. And that is what we watched over this weekend. We absolutely watched Trump make Democrats call him a king on his birthday. Here's the post from Truth Social the other day. I said, isn't it amazing how the regime will call a man a king even if he is not a king? Got to wonder if they ever did that in the past. Don't they always say revolution is justified if it's against a king? That's always the story of how people end up ruling. The people end up ruling, like they did in Russia and France. You'll remember the Jacobins, and then later on the Bolsheviks went and killed the king, and then they took over on behalf of the people. And now we have neo-Bolsheviks running our government. And they also, the same program went to Germany, and it's gone all around the world. It just is the playbook. This is the playbook. We have an actual people's movement behind Donald Trump that represents a majority of the American people, and still he is labeled as a king. That means that is all our responsibility to rise up against him and take him out so that, quote unquote, the people can then rule again under, quote unquote, democracy. But the people have not ended up ruling in those other situations. The people don't even demand legitimate elections. So there can be no democratic rule. The regime ends up ruling and creating exactly this, all done from a central authority whose rule cannot be questioned. Thank goodness it's not a king, though, right? Are kings what the regime hold off? Are the kings what hold off the regime, I should say? Is that why the regime always wants to kill them? And you have to wonder, is that the history? Do kings rise up so that that program can't be implemented? And to reject that program being implemented, do we need someone empowered to the extent of a king? We may well need that, okay? It also just might be a myth that government of, by, and for the people has ever existed on this earth, okay? We can say that those were the founding ideals and that maybe the founders gave us that for a time. We can say that, but are we certain? Are we certain that there was government of, by, and for the people? Or did we just switch from the colonial to the independent, as all these African nations have done, as Canada did from the king in Britain, but didn't actually? Okay? So if government of, by, and for the people is not a thing, then you have fewer options about what could actually happen. Now, maybe that could be a thing. Maybe there's some way to make legitimate elections or have the people weighing in constantly. And by the way, maybe you can do that through someone who is then just all powerful as a king or whatever. if they are faithfully doing that. And I believe that Donald Trump is doing that. And I believe that they have the information on what Americans actually prefer in every situation because of the amount of data that exists in the world. But if we are being controlled by a central authority that controls the entire world and only does it to our detriment while telling us we chose it ourselves through voting, that's not better than a king. It's just not better than a king. So it might only be that there is the regime and there are kings in sovereign nations, remaining sovereign leaders, and then trying to protect people who don't actually want to, and protect themselves, of course, who don't actually want to be part of that global regime and its agenda and actually prefer not to have our life's work systematically taken from us and then exploited to punish us or to punish other people like us. It's not a great program. So, acting out, saying you're against kings, doesn't really get me there. And I would kind of doubt it gets you there either. I'm not sure who is convinced by this stuff, but certainly no one should be. We're going to come back to liberal ladies in just a second. I'm going to try to knock these ads out as they come in. So I just want to remind you guys about Rumble Premium on my subscriber stream this Wednesday. That subscriber stream is going to appear on Substack and also on Rumble Premium. So if you want to watch it on the Rumble platform, you have to obviously be a paid subscriber to the show on Substack, but then you would have to have Rumble Premium. And obviously, if you don't, just watch on Substack. But Rumble Premium is a great asset to Rumble. And so we do a couple of months or a couple of hours a month to help them out. When Rumble first started in 2013, they built a platform for the small creator. They didn't censor or have biases. They were fair and treated all creators equally. No one thought platforms would censor political conversation or censor opinions on COVID, but they did. Facebook admitted they fell to pressure from the Biden and Harris administration. Rumble did not. They held the line. They are attacked daily for giving us a voice to talk to you. They're attacked in corporate media. They're attacked by governments like France. They're attacked from brand advertisers who refuse to work with them. Corporate America is fighting to remove speech. Rumble is fighting to keep it. Rumble won't survive on brand advertisers. They don't get much of it. Watching our show is the most they can ask from you. But if you really believe in this fight and you have the means, one major way you can help Rumble survive is by joining Rumble Premium. Join the community that believes in the First Amendment and our human right to free speech. Rumble's offering $10 off with the promo code STUDIO when you purchase an annual subscription. Go to rumble.com/premium and use the promo code STUDIO. Like I said, if you have the means and believe in the cause, now is the time to join Rumble Premium. If you don't have the means, we are just happy you watch us on Rumble. All right. Great success. Great success. Let us continue. Okay, so back to these No Kings rallies, depressing though they are. Just a couple of more. Here is a very sad 74-year-old lady who has been absolutely mentally and emotionally abused by her television.
I'm just so scared. I'm 74 years old. I worry about everything, and I just am so scared and upset, and I don't understand why people voted for this person.
Now, I know that's a little quiet for you audio-only people. Maybe the video people were able to hear it a little better. But she's saying she's just so sad. She's just so scared. And she can't believe why people continue voting for this person. So she is afraid of her fellow Americans, it sounds like. Not that she understands any of them or has any reason to be afraid. Nobody's trying to come kill you. You're like a granny. Yeah, you're batshit crazy. Something's gone seriously wrong and you're acting out a little bit, but you're an old lady. Nobody's coming after you. Okay? There's nothing to be scared of. Your right to abortion is not being threatened. These people have been taken all the way around the bend because they can't turn off the television. Okay? And they are mentally and emotionally abused by the TV. Now, that lady that's quite an image. But if you think about the people who are, quote unquote, on our side, people who might have even voted for Donald Trump, who are nonetheless pro-war and more concerned with Israel than anything else, there's some similarity there, okay? Both groups of people have been totally mentally and emotionally abused by their televisions, and now they are acting out in really atrocious and absurd ways. It's not better because you're like, well, yeah, I know we really need to save Israel. That's no different than them being like, yeah, we really need to save gay people. Okay. Bananas. It's the same thing, and we pretend it's not to our detriment. It is thoughts like that make it impossible for us to move forward. Let us continue. There we are. Look at these ladies.
Hands off my body! Protect our democracy! Our rights are in danger! Give us back our Constitution! Protect our parks!
Protect our parks was the last lady's sign. Protect our parks. The first lady yelled, get your hands off my body, or keep your hands off my body. Lady, no one's touching you, okay? No one's touching younger women either, inappropriately, except perverts. And they're always going to be perverts. In fact, most perverts are Democrats. Why? Because you can get away with being a pervert around them. You can't get away with being a pervert if you are in a Christian community, okay? Or around really conservative people. That's not how it works. You can only get away with being a pervert if you're around other perverts. So your threat, once again, lady, is not from those MAGA supporters, okay? And if anything, even in younger generations, men have become more scared to approach women because there's been our entire lives a campaign to tell us that we are rapists and that women don't want to talk to us. Like, everybody can see that out in the media. These people are all the way around the bend. Okay, so we got, as a result of these No Kings rallies, total failures though they were, total failures. And by the way, I haven't seen any riot footage. If somebody else out there has seen riot footage, by all means, send it my way and I will retract this comment. But I didn't see any riot footage. There were some scuffles that broke out, and there were some arrests made on threats that were going to happen. Pardon for just a second. I think the Substack feed dropped for a second, and I'm not sure if it's back or not. That's very strange. I wonder if... I don't know. Obviously, I can't know. But I wonder if... if Substack just got taken down for some reason. My feed got taken down. That doesn't make any sense. So my live stream was just ended there. And the screen it brought me to said I was number 15 in philosophy. So that's cool. I guess in a very, very small niche category, crushing it. Anyhow, I don't know what to do about that. So hopefully Substack people will make their way to Rumble or to YouTube. But anyway, we were talking about the No Kings rally flops. Didn't see too much violence. Yes, there was some threat in Philadelphia about a mass casualty incident. There was somebody somewhere stopped because they were going to plant a bomb. All that stuff sounds very J6 pipe bombers to me. Okay. All that stuff sounds like bullshit and psyop, right? I want to see the stuff on the ground that all of America is going to understand. Oh yeah, those were actually riots. I haven't seen any of that stuff. Okay. So I have to believe that they weren't riots. And we talked last week about the riots as psyops. If the riots start and then the main day there's no riots, well, either the first part was a psyop or the threat of the National Guard and the military being present at all these events and around all these events was enough to deter the violence, which would mean that Trump got it right. Okay. I'm going to... Sorry. For whatever reason, the Substack thing keeps popping up on me. Hopefully it's taken care of now. LA Chick says, just came from Substack. Yeah, I'm glad about that. Thank you for doing that. Bay Theater Dave says, I wonder if Nick Land tells his friends that he follows Chris Paul. I wish, Bay Theater Dave, that were the case. There are very few people that I actually care about interviewing. Donald Trump, obviously. But Nick Land would be one. And that singer of that band earlier, Jesse Lacey, who sings for Brand New, he would be another one. And after that, there's not very many, honestly. Steve Bannon, General Quast, when we finally get together to do one-on-one. And besides that, there's nobody that just pops up offhand. Michael Saylor would be interesting, although I'm not sure how productive that conversation would ultimately be down the road I care about. Now, flashback to last year, Sheldon Whitehouse and Chuck Schumer, and Jack Reed as well from Rhode Island. So the two Rhode Island senators and the New York Democrat Senator Chuck Schumer introduced the No Kings Act to restore checks on presidential immunity. So this is what the optics in the future will indicate was being supported this weekend. And let's read just a little bit of this. The No Kings Act would, number one, reaffirm that presidents and vice presidents do not have immunity for actions that violate U.S. criminal law. No president or vice president, former or sitting, would be entitled to immunity from criminal prosecution for actions that violate the criminal laws of the United States. The bill would clarify that Congress, not the Supreme Court, determines to whom federal criminal laws may be applied. So Congress is trying to pull power from the Supreme Court back into the Congress. Number two, they would remove the Supreme Court's appellate jurisdiction for all actions challenging the constitutionality of this legislation. Wow. So the Supreme Court wouldn't be allowed to hear the case about whether or not this legislation is constitutional. Attempting to remove the power from the Supreme Court to hear certain cases, even though they are the final authority on what's constitutional, is kind of already invalidating the Supreme Court. You can't very well say that Donald Trump has to listen to the Supreme Court in every case and then also suggest that you're going to have to create new laws that the Supreme Court isn't allowed to hear certain cases. That's incredible. The bill would allow presidents and vice presidents to challenge the constitutionality of the No Kings Act in United States District Court for the District of Columbia, the one they run in the federal capital. Isn't that incredible? Any appeal would be handled by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit, and that's Judge Boasberg, by the way. Using the exceptions clause of Article 3 of the Constitution, Congress would preclude the Supreme Court from hearing any appeals to these challenges. It would further remove the Supreme Court's appellate jurisdiction to interfere with any criminal proceedings involving presidents or vice presidents on the basis that an alleged criminal act was an official action. So, again, they could pigeonhole Donald Trump, suggest that one of his actions was actually criminal and not within the scope of his office. Okay, so something that he did as president that they didn't like, if they can later define that as criminal, they are allowed to go after and prosecute Donald Trump or any president. And the Supreme Court is not allowed to state whether or not this new legislation is constitutional, which is the Supreme Court's constitutional duty and power. And again, it's just an opinion that they ultimately will give. It's not enforceable unless the executive branch enforces it. But this is still pretty incredible. And number 3, establish additional jurisdictional and procedural guardrails. The bill would allow the United States to bring criminal actions against the president or vice president in any applicable district court or the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. It would also create a presumption of constitutionality for the No Kings Act unless a party establishes its unconstitutionality with clear and convincing evidence. Lastly, the bill would create statutes of limitations of 180 days for facial constitutional challenges and 90 days for as-applied constitutional challenges. So they're trying to make it impossible for anyone to go against this legislation. And upon passing this legislation, then they could prosecute presidents in the U.S. district courts that were not created by the Constitution. They were created by the Supreme Court. They created lower courts, which is constitutionally allowed. I'm just saying that it's not, the district courts are not prescribed in the Constitution. And you can check me. I think I'm on solid ground there. So cases could only be brought in those district courts. Well, those are the same places that all of the Mark Elias style lawfare actions are brought against the federal government and against Donald Trump in the past. Really incredible stuff. It's also where they were bringing some of the J6 related stuff was in those U.S. district courts. So that's what the No Kings thing is all about. And then they have this major optics-oriented event to suggest that the No Kings agenda actually has popular support, when, of course, it does not. Now, Donald Trump, in response to these so-called ICE protests, came out with a statement the other night on Truth Social. Yes, this was last night, sorry. He says, our nation's ICE officers have shown incredible strength, determination, and courage as they facilitate a very important mission, the largest mass deportation operation of illegal aliens in history. Every day, the brave men and women of ICE are subjected to violence, harassment, and even threats from radical Democrat politicians. But nothing will stop us from executing our mission and fulfilling our mandate for the American people. To the American people. ICE officers are herewith ordered, by notice of this truth, to do all in their power to achieve the very important goal of delivering the single largest mass deportation program in history. You remember last week that there were all these stories, and even some of Trump's comments led these stories, about how he was going to shift for farm workers or various other industries that need their illegal aliens here. So people were saying, oh, well, Donald Trump's not really committed to the deportation agenda. And of course, all the people in the pro-Nazi op and the everything is about race op go after Donald Trump. Look, he's helping all the brown people. He's not going to deport them like he said he would. This is very clear. And hey, by the way, at the same time that all of that was going on, Trump posted Trump card and announced the beginning of the Trump gold card, the immigration card. So $5 million for each gold card that buys immigration for a laborer of some variety that will be needed here in the United States. It's also a perfect drainage vehicle for any corporations who had put Americans out of work by bringing in all of this slave labor and then paying them slave wages. Well, what is an appropriate punishment for that, assuming that we're not going to disrupt the American economy and remove these businesses from the picture? Well, an enormous fine would be the sort of thing that you would think would be reasonable. And $5 million charged for each illegal alien hired could quickly turn into a lot of money. Okay? If there's 1,000 illegal aliens, that's $5 billion. If there's 1 million illegal aliens, pretty sure that's $5 trillion. I think I'm doing that math right. That gets us out of debt really quick. And it does it by removing the fiat gain from these transnational corporations that are helping the global regime implement its agenda, which is to say it is pulling that fiat money out of exactly the right places. And what they are getting in return is the ability not to be further prosecuted for the fact that they have exploited our immigration system to bring slave labor into the United States of America. It's kind of a good goal. And then what do you do once you have removed that fiat currency and you're trying to lower the amount of currency in the world so that we can deflate the currency rather than continuing to inflate it? Well, you would de-dollarize that, putting it into some kind of crypto or whatever, and then putting that crypto back onto the market. And that crypto could go back onto the market at opportune times, back into the pool, for instance, if we're talking about Bitcoin, at opportune times to maintain price control on some level. And that could be what's keeping the Bitcoin price relatively steady. It goes up and then it occasionally scales back and then it goes up again and then it remains steady for a while. So all of these are really interesting aspects for the Trump gold card. But he can do the deportations, and they're talking about the effectiveness right now of our deportation process, but not the old school style deportations where you just pick people up and move them. We are in a new era, and the New York Post outlined it today. Nearly 1 million illegal immigrants have self-deported under Trump, which has led to higher wages. Okay? That is an astounding headline. 1 million illegal immigrants have self-deported. And from the article, while ICE arrests and deportations have grabbed headlines, President Trump is also running a separate but complementary mass deportation program, one that encourages aliens here unlawfully to go home voluntarily. Based on government data, my organization, the Center for Immigration Studies, has conservatively estimated there are about 15.4 illegal aliens in the United States, a 50% increase over the 4 tumultuous years of the Biden administration. And it's probably 2 or 3 times that, to be honest. DHS next launched a multi-million-dollar ad campaign warning migrants not to enter illegally or alternatively to leave voluntarily now, and possibly have an opportunity to return and enjoy freedom and live the American dream in the future. So if they self-deport, they can apply to come back. Kristi Noem, this is, also rebranded the notorious CBP One app as CBP Home, which aliens can use to notify the U.S. government of their intent to depart. The rebranding coincided with an offer of financial incentives for aliens who leave voluntarily, a stipend of $1,000. That's in lieu of costly physical deportation, which can cost taxpayers $17,100 per person on average. And the Washington Post claims that 1 million have left the workforce since March. So how about that? The same program that was blamed for giving illegal aliens easy entry into the country is now facilitating their leaving. And so we've heard about all these different parts of the system over the years, including like camps set up in these secondary countries, whether it's Mexico or Golden Triangle countries or the rest of it. Well, are those being set up for immigration inflow or immigration outflow? And the 1 million that have already gone out on their own is much better than having to deport them in the first place, but it's also happening at a much faster rate if that number can be trusted. Now, it could have been happening for years, and we've talked about that on the podcast before. Trump has said the invasion is over. Trump said that he was fixing all sorts of things. We know that the regime, the Uniparty, was attempting to pass the unipartisan package, aka Mike Johnson's package, the immigration compromise, and that was finally going to fix the immigration. Then they just started having to tell us that immigration was fixed anyway. Well, how'd that happen? Trump just walked in and immigration was fixed. Obviously, things had to be going on before. And from a devolution standpoint, all that makes complete and total sense. So I would suggest to you that what we're seeing about this CBP One app constitutes what the CBP One app or CBP Home app always was, And we were simply misinformed about what that app was built to do because it was under Biden. And we have to be able to go back and think about these things. Let's take a very, very quick break. We'll get back to the Trump post. But I saw a Rumble rant in the chat. Karamaga says APL because of why not? And I agree. Why not? Una Panuna, indeed. Okay, back to the Trump post in Truth Social. I'm getting myself behind schedule now. But I think all this stuff's important. In order to achieve this, Trump says, we must, and this being the greatest deportation operation, we must expand efforts to detain and deport illegal aliens in America's largest cities, such as Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York, where millions upon millions of illegal aliens reside. These and other such cities are the core of the Democrat power center, where they use illegal aliens to expand their voter base, cheat in elections, and grow the welfare state, robbing good-paying jobs and benefits from hardworking American citizens. These radical left Democrats are sick of mind, hate our country, and actually want to destroy our inner cities. They are doing a good job of it. There is something wrong with them. That is why they believe in open borders, transgender for everybody, and men playing in women's sports. And that is why I want ICE, Border Patrol, and our great patriotic law enforcement officers to focus on our crime-ridden and deadly inner cities and those places where sanctuary cities play such a big role. You don't hear about sanctuary cities in our heartland. I want our brave ICE officers to know that real Americans are cheering you on every day. The American people want our cities, schools, and communities to be safe and free from illegal alien crime, conflict, and chaos. That's why I've directed my entire administration to put every resource possible behind this effort and reverse the tide of mass destruction migration that has turned once idyllic towns into scenes of third world dystopia. Our federal government will continue to be focused on the remigration of aliens to the places where they came and preventing the admission of anyone who undermines the domestic tranquility of the United States. To ICE, FBI, DEA, ATF, and the Patriots at the Pentagon and the State Department, you have my unwavering support. Now go get the job done, DJT. Okay? So a couple interesting things from this. One is that Trump is making quite clear that this Truth Social post is an official presidential statement. They are ordered by notice of this truth to do all in their power to achieve the very important goal of delivering the single largest mass deportation program in history. So all of them know by notice of this truth, and all of us know what they've been put on notice to understand, all with this truth. And we discussed many times how during the first term in the courts, they determined that Trump's tweets were official statements of the president. So here we have a reminder of that exact element. And then we have illegal aliens to expand the voter base and cheat in elections. And I just realized that I have not had this post on the screen for the entire time. So there it is. They're going to expand their voter base and cheat in elections. How are they going to do that on illegal aliens? Because we're told illegals can't vote anywhere. First of all, they're trying to give the vote to illegals in many, many places. And second of all, illegals, their names are entered into databases. Voter registrations are created in those names. Votes are created according to those voter registrations. They are then cast, collected, and counted. The illegal alien never has anything to do with it. That's entirely possible and probably the case in the overwhelming majority of cases. But nonetheless, their being here is being used to steal elections. And Trump is, once again, talking about stolen elections. So did stolen elections stop because Trump won a fake election in 2024? No. And at some point, this is going to be like the RINO hunting thing, where people are like, you can't keep calling the election fake. Yes, I can. It's fake. It's obviously fake. It's a battle of narratives and a psyop that we participate in to hoodwink ourselves. It's only fake. It's not something else. The leaders are not chosen through elections. It doesn't matter how much cheating is involved. The numbers they give us at the end don't represent the votes. Okay? They're just fake. And they've created a system to make it very difficult to understand that they're fake. Okay? And it is very difficult for people. But our leaders are not chosen through elections. If there are any elections that are legitimate anywhere in this country, then fine and wonderful. And cheers to all those people being honest and that community being small enough and high trust enough that they can do that. But there's no reason to believe that's actually the case, particularly because the machines that run the elections are totally unreliable, even according to the best experts on those machines, as we have seen in the Lindell trial that we discussed at some length with Ash in America on Devolution Power Hour Saturday night. And Ash is just brilliant on this stuff. She's got an encyclopedic knowledge of all this. She attended the litigation in the Lindell versus Coomer case. I recommend watching that very highly. We also got to talk about Dennis Montgomery and PCAPs. And oh, by the way, now all of a sudden, there's quantum technology that can capture information packets. And that's what we're discovering with this Antarctic radio wave story. And we're not going to get into that now. But, the Lindell Coomer thing, that trial is just concluding. And we're finding out that there's quantum computers that can capture packets. You know what PCAP is? Packet capture. Kind of tongue twisted myself there. PCAP, packet capture. Just saying. I've always been a Dennis Montgomery and Mike Lindell guy. The machines are shit. I don't think that they are running an info op to confuse people about the machines being shit. The machines have always been shit. They're always going to be shit. Okay? Unless there's a new technology that advances and is fully transparent and without flaw, which I'm not sure is possible, then that's where we are. All right. Continuing forward. So, very interesting Trump post. Here is the Gavin Newsom response, and then the Stephen Miller response to the Gavin Newsom response. Gavin says, quoting this post, his plan is clear: incite violence and chaos in blue states, have an excuse to militarize our cities, demonize his opponents, keep breaking the law, and consolidate power. It's illegal and we will not let it stand. Really, Gavin, because the courts did let it stand the other day. And also, that's not what Trump is doing at all. Your cities really are like that. And there really are millions of illegal aliens in those cities, and you don't dispute it. You just think it's okay. Well, the rest of America doesn't think it's okay. That's all there is to it, Gavin. Sorry. You are violating the Constitution and the will of your people to flood their communities with illegal aliens. Stephen Miller responds and says, you run a sanctuary state that illegally harbors foreign terrorists and willfully perpetuates a criminal invasion of the United States. The government of California does not recognize, but willfully and maliciously abrogates the supremacy of federal and constitutional law. And indeed they do. Okay, we are going to now switch to the Israel subject. But before we do that, let's clear out the last of these ads. And this one is for Truth Social, okay, which is one of my two primary social media platforms. If you're looking for a great place online for news, discussion, and entertainment, then check out Truth Social, Donald Trump's social media website. You'll get breaking news stories and commentary from top media figures. If you want to see Trump's legendary Truth Social posts, then get on Truth Social today. Join a growing community of patriots on a free speech platform designed to avoid censorship and cancellation by big tech. Make your voice heard, join the movement, join Truth Social. And if you do that, you will find me at I'm Your Moderator on Truth Social. And I try to post there most of the stuff that I put on Telegram, or at least, the stuff that I write originally, I usually do on Truth Social and then move to Telegram. Telegram has many more links and whatnot, but I'm your moderator on Truth Social. And I think it's important to establish these parallel platforms. At some point, there's going to be a split and a divergence. And I would not want to be caught without a solid platform as we all were in late 2020 and early 2021. Okay. It takes too long to reestablish elsewhere. And, for all the people who say, trust Trump and I trust the plan, how come you don't commit yourselves to Truth Social? That's his platform. He says that's the place for free speech. Why don't you commit yourself to Truth Social? Why instead are you groveling for likes and follows on Twitter, trying to get some Elon bucks if you get enough attention for playing Match Online? Clown show, man. It's unbelievable that people pretend their opinions are all their principles about trusting Trump or trusting the plan. No, it's just whenever it aligns with the thing that they want to do. They don't act it out. Where are they? All right. Let's get to some of this Israel stuff. I don't know if we're going to get all the way through it. I was doing really well on time, and then I just totally crushed myself on time. But we're going to try. And we're going to start here with a bit of a flashback and a hat tip to my pal, Patriots. Oh, no, sorry, I was going to say Patriots in Progress, but I think this was actually The Storm Has Arrived, and they are like brothers or something.
To go too far would have never happened with me. I had Iran in check. Do you know, we hit them very hard for something that they did, and they had to hit back. They feel they have to do that, and I understand that. Do you know they called me to tell me we're going to hit a certain location, but we're not going to hit it. It's going to be outside of the perimeters.
Who called you?
Iran called me, called for me. And they let us know, and we had 16 missiles went off. I believe it was 16. 6 or 7 failed in the air.
When was this?
This was prior to the attack on a fort that we had where they hit back. Do you remember when they sent 18 missiles or 16 missiles? 5 failed. They let us know, don't move. We're going to have to hit you back. Psychologically, we have to do that because we hit them on something. You remember. They sent 16 or 18 missiles, and we knew they weren't going to hit inside the fort. And the media was going, and now I reveal it, the media was going wild because they say it's strange. They're very accurate missiles. How come they all missed? Nobody was killed, if you remember.
Yes,
with all of those missiles, nobody was killed. Now, they had to do it because they have people and they have to show strength. So they aimed the missiles, but they said, please don't attack us. We're not going to hit you. That was respect. We had respect.
So that is not a real attack. That's a fake attack to save face in the media. And in response to that fake attack, Iran against a U.S. base, we were told by regime media that all the soldiers had gotten traumatic brain injury from the sound of the attack. Trump was very bad. Look at what he did to these soldiers in taking out Soleimani. So there can be kinetic activity in the real world, and that kinetic activity can also be a fake attack. Okay? That's entirely possible. It's logically consistent, and it's a concept that people have to begin to understand. Okay? The fact that there is something kinetic happening does not make that thing real as described and shown to us. It doesn't even make it a real attack. Okay? It can be an attack that Trump agrees to with his Iranian opposite and says, I know you got to hit us back to save face. Go ahead and hit us. Your missiles are so accurate, they're going to hit right in that one spot. Gosh, somehow they missed. No, they didn't. They hit exactly where they meant to. It just wasn't actually the base. Okay? 16 or 18 missiles, definitely not 17. But that is a real dynamic. In fact, that's the only real dynamic. Right? Again, the war is not between the United States and Iran. It's not even between Israel and Iran. It's not between Russia and Ukraine. The only real war is between the good twin faction worldwide and the evil twin faction, the global regime worldwide. And it's happening all over the place. That's the real war. All of these other wars are fake neocon wars. All right? They are stories about war to make us give our power over to them because we believe that we are facing an existential threat. That's what they are. They are fake neocon wars. Let us continue. In addition to that clip, it is important to mention this.
Back on Iran, did you warn Prime Minister Netanyahu against taking some sort of actions that could disrupt the talks there in a phone call last week?
Well, I'd like to be honest.
Let me approach that a different way because it cut me off. That first clip was from a year ago. That was during the campaign. Trump told that story many times at rallies. Let's do this way though, because I want to skip forward. We don't need to hear the entire clip here. Let's jump to about here.
I don't trust anybody. So no trust. I want it very strong where we can go in with inspectors. We can take whatever we want. We can blow up whatever we want, but nobody getting killed. We can blow up a lab, but nobody's going to be in the lab, as opposed to everybody being in the lab and blowing it up, right? Two ways of doing it. Yeah, I told him this would be inappropriate to do right now because we're very close to a solution. Now, that could change at any moment. It could change with a phone call. But right now, I think they want to make a deal, and if we can make a deal, save a lot of lives.
So that was Trump just a few weeks ago, talking about how he could discuss with Iran, make sure that these labs didn't have any people in them, and then we could go blow up a lab if we need to blow up a lab. So he has told us that sort of thing happens. He's told us that it's happened before with Iran, and then he tells us that it might happen again, and there won't have to be any death, and the other side will agree to allow us to destroy this facility. It's a really important concept to wrap our heads around, particularly when the television is going to broadcast something designed to upset us and tell us, oh, our greatest ally, Israel, is now attacking Iran. And because you know that Muslims are bad, we're going to have to agree to go to war on behalf of Israel to destroy Iran, even though Iran is backed by China and Russia. And, oh, yeah, we're going to have to do that over the nuclear weapon that they're about to get, even though you've already said it's okay for them to have nuclear energy, and your negotiations with Iran have been entirely based on that. I don't know how anybody can believe this shit, honestly. I really, really don't. Okay? I understand there's some video. Everybody on TV says it, and then Donald Trump makes statements that suggest it's real. Not trying to argue that it's all totally fake, all right? It's possible that kinetic things could be happening. Maybe it's just evil twin targets being taken out in Israel and Tehran. That is entirely possible, okay? I'm not taking away from the possibility of that. What I'm saying is the stories about these incidents are fake. And when you understand the story is fake, you can't just believe the story, pretend that the story is real, and then analyze on that basis. It's madness. Let us continue. Another little flashback. This is from the IAEA. That's the International Atomic Energy Association, I think it's called, or agency. This is the director of that agency saying nuclear facilities should never be attacked.
Development is deeply concerning. I have repeatedly stated that nuclear facilities must never be attacked, regardless of the context or circumstances, as it could harm both people and the environment. Such attacks have serious implications for nuclear safety, security, and safeguards, as well as regional and international peace and security.
Now, perhaps that was all said because we were being told a story about how Russia was attacking Zaporozhye. And we were told that Russia might cause the outbreak of a nuclear World War III because they were attacking Russian nuclear plants. And they'd already told us about that in regards to Chernobyl earlier in the very brutal invasion. What did I say at the time? Hey, that's bullshit. Hey, you know what else is bullshit? This Zaporozhye thing. How do we know these things? Well, because we know conceptually that this is bullshit. And so now we have the principle that they sold. It's very dangerous to attack a nuclear facility because that could lead to the outbreak of nuclear war. It could harm the environment. It could kill people. We've gone from that to nuclear facilities must be attacked in order to save Israel from a magical bomb. Smart, real smart. And people are like, well, you got to be serious. It's got to be done. The people out there pretending to be serious while believing whatever they see on television and being totally enthralled to this ridiculous Republican establishment, thinking that somehow they're going to win the approval of the establishment and then they'll have the money. They'll be the serious people weighing in. Give me a break, you morons. These neocons pretending to be truthers, pretending to be MAGA, pretending to be Q followers and the rest of it. It's part of that program is removing the neocons. The neocons have always been this force. They have not done anything else. It is revolution all the time, a la Trotsky, using the military everywhere. Okay? That's the agenda. You can't support that and MAGA. You can't support that and be America first. It's not possible. It is a total contradiction. And it would be better off, we would all be better off if we recognized these things and called them out for what they were rather than continuing to support these platforms while they lie to us. And these influencers just groveling, attention farming online. Unbelievable. This is Axios from over the weekend. Actually, sorry, this was from Friday. Israel's strike on Iran was 8 months in the making. So for 8 months, clandestine preparations for this operation. Sounds incredible, just like that very real Ukrainian drone strike against Russia, taking out all of their nuclear assets. Remember that? Oh, they're going to, or not all of their nuclear assets. I'm exaggerating. But targeted strikes. They're going to reduce their capacity. The operation launched a new war in the Middle East that could draw in the U.S., demolished any hopes of a nuclear deal. No, it didn't. And dealt arguably the biggest single blow to the Iranian regime since the 1979 revolution, and it is only just beginning. This is Axios saying all of this. Okay? So, A, it's not going to draw in the U.S. B, it's not going to ruin hopes of a nuclear deal. And C, the biggest single blow to the Iranian regime? Doubtful. Israel is attempting to, quote unquote, eliminate Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile capabilities in an operation expected to last at least several days, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced. Other Israeli officials said it could take weeks. And so let's go ahead and leave that where it is. We don't need to spend more time on that particular story. You get the point. I'm just trying to add all the story elements in here so we can have a full and complete understanding. Here is the word from Israeli military officials. And you'll notice that the source of all the information about these war events is the IDF. And everybody's like, well, we got to trust our Israeli partners. Got to trust our Israeli partners, even though they are this military unit, this group that essentially just creates propaganda. They're like the Wagner Group or NASA. NASA needs a rebranding too, by the way. I think it's going to get one soon.
First, Caitlin, something I just heard from a senior Israeli official who says that according to Israeli assessments, there are very high chances that the entire Iranian general staff, including the head of the Iranian general staff of the Iranian military, and several senior Iranian nuclear scientists were all eliminated in the Israeli strikes tonight. I hear that again from a senior Israeli official who says that several senior top Iranian military commanders, including the head of the general staff of the Iranian military and senior nuclear scientists, have all been targeted in those strikes. And according to IDF assessments, there's a high chance that they've been eliminated.
So according to multiple unnamed sources, according to that guy, there's at least a high chance that high-ranking Iranian military officials have been killed. Fox News, naturally, got in on the action as well. Let me just make sure I'm in the right. Here we are. Here we are. Got to keep the rundown in order. If I lose my place, who knows if we will ever find our way back.
The leader of the country survived. What is the thinking on that in terms of the Ayatollah today? Who is he surrounded with? The number twos. But I guess if you're feeling like you're number two right now, you're still not very safe.
Yeah, I think Israel's goal was to decapitate Iran's military. They also killed the national security official who was leading the nuclear negotiations with the United States, Ali Shamkhani. The goal here for Israel was to destroy Iran's means of retaliation, but also to create the opportunity for others to be potentially promoted into their place. I think, as President Trump noted, maybe they will be less intransigent, less defiant, less provocative. But at this point, Israel tried everything they could, so did the United States, to bring a diplomatic resolution and prevent the crisis that is unfolding in the Middle East.
A decapitation strike, taking out all the top officials. And, okay, let's think about what we are being told from a narrative-only sense, okay? Ignoring whether or not these officials were taken out, because give me a break. We heard of these people the day before, and they took out the guy negotiating the nuclear deal. So all these people are taken out. Well, first off, we didn't know any of those people until they tell us those people are dead. And all we need is the story. What is the story element? Iran's military is being decapacitated, okay? And decapitated. Both, actually. And I even meant to say it that way. And I was like, wait, I just said decapitated. Now it's going to sound retarded. These are the things I listen to myself, you know. So we have that element. The Iranian military is weakened. And then we have the guy who was negotiating the nuclear deal with Trump. Now he's gone. So the nuclear deal, as Axios said, well, that's going to be impossible now. But we've gotten rid of these military people. And what else have they done? It's not just the military people. They've also gone after Iran's nuclear facilities, we are told. That's what the entire idea is, take out the nuclear facilities. So Iran's military is being taken out, the leadership is being taken out, and the nuclear capability is being taken out. Not that there was one. So what is the threat that Iran poses? Well, they don't pose a threat anymore. And now Iran begins attacking Israel back. If Israel's capacities are going to be depleted, then what's the Israel threat? What is the threat of the war if they're both destroying all their important stuff? Israel's going to just go in and destroy all of Iran's important stuff immediately. And Iran is also the greatest funder of terrorism in the world. Hezbollah and the Houthis and all of these terrorist organizations, the IRGC they have, all this stuff. And the backing of China and Russia. And sure, yeah, Ukraine. Israel is going to take out their entire military capacity immediately. Unbelievable. And because it is so unbelievable, and because the story is so blatantly and obviously for a specific purpose, we should immediately take steps back and say, you know what? I know it may sound a little crazy, but I don't have any reason to believe this is true. And we don't have any reason to believe it's true. Let's keep going. Germany, how about this? Here's another sign that maybe things aren't exactly what we're told. The German Foreign Office posts on X, formerly Twitter, we strongly condemn the indiscriminate Iranian attack on Israeli territory. Iran's nuclear program violates the Non-Proliferation Treaty and poses a threat to the entire region, especially to Israel. Lord Bibo on X, formerly Twitter, wrote, in quoting this post, Israeli bombs Iran. I don't know. I'm trying to read this exactly and think, oh, there must be a way this works. Israel bombs Iran the whole day. Iran hasn't even retaliated, and Germany already condemns their attack. What is going on? Germany, you okay? Sounds like what's going on is the communications program got screwed up. Like when they announced that Queen Elizabeth had died before she had actually died. Before the official announcement that she had actually died. The first announcement was also probably way after she actually died. Gosh, everything is so weird. It's hard to be exact with language when the situations are so fluid. Let us continue to some of the post-attack reaction. And here we have an absolutely emaciated Mike Pompeo showing up on Fox with Harris Faulkner.
Who you were around in terms of large events, Jewish events. I mean, this sounds like we've gone backwards decades in terms of the threat on Jewish lives. But that's exactly what this is also about.
Harris, I actually think it's just the converse of that. I do agree this could be a very high tension, stressful, and indeed there may be an event somewhere in the world. It's not just the missiles or drones they'll fly to Israel, but the Iranian IRGC, the very leadership the Israelis destroyed last night, has been working in nearly every country around the world, including the United States of America, to plant little terror cells all across the world. Hezbollah was doing the same. So this will be a very difficult period. But in the end, this was not a reckless attack, but indeed what they did was decent and just and righteous, and will reduce risk to the Jewish diaspora around the world. And for Israel and for the United States of America, a really good set of outcomes are in the offing, so long as Israel is prepared to finish the task, and as long as the world unites to provide continued deterrence and defense to prevent Iran from conducting all kinds of attacks. I think of cyber threats that will probably be projected around the world too. Iranians have a great cyber program. So lots of vectors for them to respond. We all need to be alert and responsive and do everything we can to deter them from coming after any American anywhere in any field.
So we have this massive increase in the threat on Jewish lives as a result of Israel attacking Iran. That's strange. We were told that there were sleeper cells, Iranian sleeper cells all over the country, and that they were going to be activated this weekend in conjunction with the No Kings riots or rallies or whatever, potentially. That has not materialized. I have not seen anything about that. Maybe you have. I don't know. But there was a lot of fear-mongering going on about these little cells and the things that they might do. And Iran all of a sudden poses this massive threat. They're going to cyber attack us. They're going to do all these things. So what we need to do is support Israel going after Iran. Now, I know a lot of people have a degree of confidence in Mike Pompeo, most particularly because of how he talked about a smooth transition to a second Trump term when all of the election stuff was happening in the post-2020 election period. I get it. I still hold out hope for him too. But he sounds like just your standard neocon throughout that entire thing. And maybe that's the story that needs to get pushed out there, right? Maybe the story's all coming out with a variety of brands representing all these different viewpoints so that they can be argued out. It's just really strange that all the people who take this viewpoint, the neocon viewpoint, the Israel first viewpoints, they always seem to stay on that stuff. And they can take whatever branding on whatever other issues they want, but on those ones, they're always exactly the same. And I could totally believe that there is a movement of sovereign, individualistic, populist-oriented Jews in Israel, or even just Israelis who aren't Jews. I can totally believe that exists. And we know that it exists because one of the major issues is Orthodox Jews not wanting to get signed into Israel's military nonsense. Okay. So we know that there are people who disagree with the regime there. We know that not every Jewish person is a Zionist. In fact, there are anti-Zionists who argue that Zionism is itself an inversion of Judaism. Like that Zionism is forbidden by Judaism. There are Jews that believe that. Okay. And so to the extent that those people are there, well, maybe we're helping them there. Just like in Ukraine, in the Donbass region, we talk about that being Ukraine, even though it's not Ukraine anymore. But helping those people against the regime government and their military apparatus in Ukraine, well, that's not a bad version of us helping Ukraine. That's us helping the good twin ally in Ukraine. And so there could be a good twin ally in Israel. And to the extent that there is, they may well deserve our help. But if that's what was happening, why aren't these people arguing for that? Why aren't they telling the American people that there is this other faction? Now, you can just say they're biding time until one day we get the great reveal. But there's no evidence that that's actually true at this point. We can leave open the possibility that it might become true. We might see that as true at some point. But otherwise, you're going on a very thin evidentiary basis for taking that as a hard stance. It doesn't make sense, particularly when what you're doing from that position is supporting the indiscriminate killing of whoever they determine, whoever they say the bad guys are. That's bananas. I don't know how anybody can sign themselves up for that sort of standpoint publicly. I think it is a ridiculous notion to think that you can be moral while supporting that. Here is Eli David, an insane warmonger on X, formerly Twitter. This is how precise Israel's intelligence and execution is. Pinpointed attack, eliminating head of IRGC directly in his apartment, nearly 2,000 kilometers away from Israel. Wow, wowie, wow. Hold on. This calls for...
Wow. Wowie, wow, wow, wow.
Man, that was so weird. Sorry, I just disappeared there for a second. StreamYard has become such an unreliable app with how it displays on the screen. There used to be ways to set this stuff up, and they have totally blown it. It like will shift itself between different views. And as you can see, oh, there we are. As you can see, every time I bring up an article and I have to have the full article there, taking up most of the screen, and then I have to switch it over. It's because you can't default it to the other way. So annoying. Eli David saying that we have this incredibly specific attack on this building. Now, I guess a missile or a drone hit that, and we should just make it clear right from the beginning that a missile is nowhere near as powerful as jet fuel when it burns, right? Jet fuel, when it burns, can destroy the World Trade Center. A missile only took out this one apartment here. And if Israel is that precise, then what are we seeing in Gaza? What are we seeing in Gaza if Israel is actually this precise? Got to wonder, what exactly is going on with this ridiculous info op? This is Fox News' Trey Yingst making this entire thing more clownish than I could possibly imagine.
Accept that threat. We know there, as you are doing now, public's been instructed to enter a protected space, remain there until further notice. Trey, we're just getting a firsthand look at what you are going through just to deliver the news from Tel Aviv at this hour.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they're trying to strap a helmet on this idiot's head before he reports live from Tel Aviv, Israel. Israel's San Francisco, legitimately known as one of the gayest places on earth, if not the gayest. That's Tel Aviv, the most regime-infiltrated city in the world, as one might suspect. Well, he's watching things get bombed there, we're being told. They're going to strap a helmet on him to make it look like he's in a war zone. He doesn't know the camera's on him, so they're trying to get this thing on. And then he realizes that they're actually about to go to him, even though they've already gone to him. And so he's like, oh, well, I guess I'll put the helmet down. I don't need it. Is there a war going on behind this man? I have a very hard time believing that. He's clearly in no threat whatsoever, and no one there believes he's at any sort of threat because the producer, whoever that was, cameraman, who knows, someone in the crew who went to give him that helmet doesn't have their own helmet on. How does it happen? Here we are. Now, Iran, they decided to respond back, and look at this video. Lights are flying through the sky. And then there. They're blowing up. Or they're sort of blowing up. Or they're blowing up in the sky. They're just... Oh God. That's so loud. There you have it, everybody. Proof that the war is 100% real. You saw a video that looked like it was shot on someone's own cell phone. And what are they going to do? Use AI? Get out of here. AI could never make video like that. John and I proved on Devolution Power Hour last weekend, not this past Saturday, the Saturday before, that the AI that is available to consumers at this point can make video exactly like that. I don't know that it's fake. I'm just saying. All we're seeing is lights in the sky on television. I have seen plenty of movies that had scenes just like that one, so they can clearly be made without bombing anyone. We know AI can make pretty much anything at this point. Consumer AI even, much less military AI, that could definitely do what consumer AI does 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 50 years ago, or 1,000 years ago. Okay? So there are people with access to better technology than we have. And to think that they're not going to use it to exploit us in every way imaginable is a bit crazy. Here we have an exploitation. You have to wonder, because what is the response meant to be? The response is meant to be, we support war with Israel. So we know that our exploitation is the end goal of all of this. And we're like, no, they couldn't be doing it to exploit us. They would never do that. Not when it comes to Israel. All the war footage is real. Just like the ghost of Kyiv. You don't have to prove that it's fake. The burden of proof is on the people making the ridiculous statements. And if you can't wrap your head around the idea that we're bombing Iranian nuclear facilities is an extraordinary statement that should require extraordinary proof, don't know how to help you. Okay? That's something that should require extraordinary proof. And instead we demand no proof whatsoever because we think the issue is so important, they shouldn't have to prove it. If we cannot stop being retarded, we are never going to move on from this point. Okay? Let us continue. This is the statement from Marco Rubio. On June 12th, Thursday evening here in America, when the Israel attacks began, when the Israel attacks Iran narrative began. Tonight, Israel took unilateral action against Iran. Unilateral means they decided to do it by themselves. We are not involved in strikes against Iran, and our top priority is protecting American forces in the region. Israel advised us that they believe this action was necessary for its self-defense. President Trump and the administration have taken all necessary steps to protect our forces and remain in close contact with our regional partners. Let me be clear, Iran should not target U.S. interests or personnel. Okay, so he's saying very clearly that the U.S. was not involved in those attacks. The U.S., in fact, was busy negotiating with these people. They want to protect American forces. In fact, last week there were stories about American forces being withdrawn from the Middle East, but also there's this new war. Let us continue. This is Semaphore. We don't have to go too far into this. This is Ben Smith, formerly of the New York Times, the same guy who wrote the Mark Andreessen Signal chat story a few weeks ago. Ben Smith, co-founder of Semaphore. Pentagon split over Trump's Israel policy. How about that? That means there are people in the Pentagon who want to go to war on Israel's behalf and people who don't. And we're not going to spend much time on this, but U.S. military leaders, including the chief of U.S. Central Command, General Michael Kurilla, have requested more resources and support to support and defend Israel. But their requests have drawn resistance from Undersecretary of Defense for Policy Eldridge Colby, who has long opposed moving U.S. military assets from Asia to the Middle East. People sympathetic to each side of the argument told Semaphore. So there's a split in the Pentagon. Are we defending Israel? Are we not defending Israel? Let's go to Donald Trump. Actually, no, let's go to this article in Tablet. This is written by Lee Smith, who has done a lot of pro-MAGA work over the years, and he is always pro-Israel and always Zionist. And I don't want to say anything bad about Lee Smith, but I think he is hoodwinking himself and hoodwinking Americans with this take. I think this take is just clearly, obviously false. The Normal President is the title of his article in Tablet on Friday. By quarterbacking Israel's attack on Iran, Trump brought an end to a particularly demoralizing era in U.S. history. And so we're not going to go through the whole argument, but I want to go through just a couple pieces of this. Skipping down a bit. Until this morning, when Trump posted on Truth Social to take credit for the raid, there was some confusion about the administration's involvement. As the operation began, Secretary of State Marco Rubio released a statement claiming it was solely an Israeli show without any American participation. But even if details about intelligence sharing and other aspects of Israeli-U.S. coordination were hazy, the statement was obviously misleading. The entire operation was keyed to Trump. Without him, the attack wouldn't have happened as it did, or maybe not at all. Now, maybe there is some technical way to describe how this is true. But nothing else about the story suggests this is true. And because the administration came out to say that Trump wasn't involved, they needed to make Trump involved. So you already have an obvious motivation. And then we have this massive, sprawling, elaborate, absurd story about how Trump and Bibi got together and tricked everybody, most especially the Iranians, to believe that no attack was going to happen. Trump and Bibi tricked all of those, some of whom are partners in the Middle East, that no attack was going to happen, and then they launched the attack. And that's what allowed it to be so successful. People believe this. I don't know how people believe this. This is very stupid. This is the most desperate possible cope attempt to tie Trump into all of this, as far as I'm concerned. Let's continue. Trump spent 2 months neutralizing the Iranians without them realizing he was drawing them into the briar patch. Iranian diplomats pride themselves on their negotiating skills. Generations of U.S. diplomats have marveled at the Iranians' ability to wipe the floor with them. It's a cultural thing. Ever try to bargain with a carpet merchant in Tehran? And Trump also praised them repeatedly for their talents. Very good negotiators. The Iranians were in their sweet spot and must have imagined they could negotiate until Trump gave in to their demands or left office. But Trump was the trickster. He tied them down for 2 months, time that he gave to the Israelis to make sure they had everything in order. Really, Trump negotiated in bad faith for 2 months to trick the Iranians so that Israel could attack them? I don't believe that. There's already lots of talk about Trump's deception campaign, and in the days and weeks to come, we'll have more insight into which statements were real and which were faked, and which journalists were used without them knowing it to print fake news to ensure the operation's success. That is an elaborate conspiracy theory. And he doesn't even know which stories were real and which stories were fake. He just knows that Trump tricked Iran to help Israel attack Iran. Now, again, if he's helping the Israeli good twin attack the Iranian evil twin, then fine. I guess you have described the story exactly how it went down. But if that's what you're saying, why don't you just say that? A few weeks ago, a colleague told me of a brief conversation with a very senior Israeli official who said that Jerusalem and Washington see eye to eye on Gaza and left it at that. Oh, so a senior Israeli official told Lee Smith that? As my colleague saw it and was meant to see it, this was not good news insofar as it suggested a big gap between the two powers on Iran. The deception campaign was so tight, it meant misleading friends casually. And all of that, of course, is totally moral. It's totally moral to mislead your friends casually if it's for the benefit of Israel. It's almost like this ethno-state is supremacist in their ideology, and therefore, because they are the chosen people who can do whatever they want, they are allowed to act in any immoral way required for them to protect themselves, as long as they say that they are under threat. It's now clear that the insanely dense communications environment, including foreign actors like the Iranians themselves, anti-Bibi Israeli journalists, the Gulf states, and the Europeans, serve the purpose of the deception campaign. Now, anti-Bibi Israeli journalists is a very interesting category because I've said many times, our boy Yuhu, I believe that Bibi and Trump are working in alignment, not because Bibi's a good guy necessarily, but because the game theory suggests there's no other choice. But talking about anti-Bibi Israeli journalists is interesting. Smith goes on. But most significant was the domestic component. Did the Iranians believe reports that the pro-Israel camp was losing influence with Trump and that the restraintists were on the rise? Did Iran lobbyist Trita Parsi tell officials in Tehran that his colleagues from the Quincy Institute and other Koch-funded policy experts who were working in the administration had it in the bag? Don't worry about the neocons. My guys are steering things in a good way. It seems that, like the Iranians, the Koch network got caught in its own echo chamber. And then he talks about whether or not Operation Rising Lion really split MAGA, as some MAGA influencers are warning. Now, no, it will not split MAGA. In addition, that story sounds retarded, okay? We're meant to believe that Trump and Witkoff went over there to trick everybody, including all of the Middle Easterners that Trump just talked to last week. Or not last week, but what was it, 2-3 weeks ago? Let me find. There's actually an article about that today, and I thought I had it pulled, but let me find it really quickly. Hold for processing. This is about, here we are. Just quickly, I'll show you the headline, Badlands Media here. Iran asks Gulf states to urge Trump to press Israel for a ceasefire in exchange for flexibility in the nuclear talks. The deal as it existed a few weeks ago was Iran can enrich uranium for nuclear energy, but they're not allowed to have a nuclear weapon. And so Iran is urging all of the partners of Trump, who Trump told to their faces he's not supporting any neocons. All of them are going to urge Trump to get an Israeli ceasefire so they can get the deal done. The same deal they were already going to have before. If Trump tricked all of these people tricked them into giving him the displays at their royal palaces, the treatment of a king. He tricked them all into that. He tricked them all into believing that there was going to be an Iranian nuclear deal that is, by the way, already set up. It's already a done deal. You can read about it. They already have, I think we talked about it last week, other countries coming into that deal, Turkey, the United States, uranium enrichment for export, essentially, from Iran. That deal's already in place. Those countries are involved. Trump tricked them? No. He tricked the neocons. He tricked the Zionists and the Israelis and the globalists, I would suggest. And they can't wrap their heads around that. Okay? So they have created this elaborate excuse as to how Donald Trump somehow working with Bibi Netanyahu, tricked all of these people so that Israel could strike Iran. There is no way that's true. Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson, I should have pulled the clip. I thought I had it, but I don't. Steve, and if anybody can find it and send it over, I will definitely play it. But Tucker Carlson and Steve Bannon today talked about how they know for a fact there's no way that Witkoff was over there tricking people on behalf of Donald Trump. And it does not make any sense. Okay? So you've got a neocon cope here to get Americans to think that Donald Trump is actually wanting to go to war against Iran on behalf of Israel. And the neocons are pushing and pushing and pushing. And all of that will be rejected. I can't believe that people believe those stories, but they do. They believe them so hard, including people who call themselves truthers. We are going to keep going. I want to take a second and look at the chats. I wonder if maybe I really am of two minds. Part of me thinks that we should hold the rest of this for the subscriber stream on Wednesday, but I don't know. There's a lot happening. I don't like to miss things. Rocks Cry Out, $20, Rumble Rants. You are on fire today, my friend, and this is just the first show. Glad we have you for 2 more this week. That is the plan, 2 more this week. And thank you for your compliments. I missed a Rumble Rant earlier. This is very strange. For some reason, I can't see who gave me the rant because there's a little banner covering it. But I'm going to say Polymathonon or Jay Drake or somebody says, Chris, big love and respect from England. Okay, so it's neither of them. Thanks for helping me to keep me sane, APL. Thank you very much for your $10 Rumble Rants. And I give the people what they want. Okay, so let's keep going with some of this. Let's assume you're still like, that's crazy. Donald Trump is definitely involved with all of this. He knows all of this, and he's on board. He was tricking Bibi Netanyahu. All this attack is real. The central narrative is undefeated. Let's keep going. Donald Trump on Truth Social. We remain committed. This is June 12th, 5:09 p.m. on the East Coast. Okay? So this is just a couple of hours before the Israel bombs Iran narrative began. We remain committed to a diplomatic resolution to the Iran nuclear issue. My entire administration has been directed to negotiate with Iran. They could be a great country, but they first must completely give up hopes of obtaining a nuclear weapon. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Completely committed to a diplomatic solution. And yet, we are supposed to believe all of this is a lie. All of this was to trick Iran so that Israel could blow it up. And somehow Trump still wants a deal done with all the partners who he told were no longer going to be at the command of the neocons. Trump followed up in the early morning of June 13th, Friday. So now this is after the Israel attacks Iran narrative began. He says, I gave Iran chance after chance to make a deal. I told them in the strongest of words to just do it, quote unquote. But no matter how hard they tried, no matter how close they got, they just couldn't get it done. I told them it would be much worse than anything they know, anticipated, or were told, that the United States makes the best and most lethal military equipment anywhere in the world by far, and that Israel has a lot of it, with much more to come, and they know how to use it. Certain Iranian hardliners spoke bravely, but they didn't know what was about to happen. They are all, capital letters, dead now, and it will only get worse. There's already been great death and destruction, but there is still time to make this slaughter, with the next already planned attacks being even more brutal, come to an end. Iran must make a deal before there is nothing left and save what was once known as the Iranian Empire. No more death, no more destruction. Just do it before it's too late. God bless you all. So, he says the attack happened. They're on board with it. Israel's potentially even using American weapons to hit them. All these military leaders are dead, and he doesn't want any more slaughter. What he wants is Iran to make a deal. So, did the attack blow up any chance of Iran making a deal? Certainly not in the view of Donald J. Trump, and his view is the one that matters, not the view of Semaphore or Axios or Lee Smith or anyone else, as much as I respect Lee Smith. Okay? So we have the attacks happen. Marco Rubio suggests that maybe the United States didn't have anything to do with these attacks. Then Trump kind of says that they sort of did. And then he made some other statements that day kind of in line with that. Here is what Trump said. Here's his second post from Friday morning. 2 months ago, I gave Iran a 60-day ultimatum to make a deal. They should have done it. Today is day 61. I told them what to do, but they just couldn't get there. Now they have, perhaps, a second chance. Wow. A second chance. All it took for them to get a second chance was Israel bombing them. This is the Ron Filipkowski response. Now, this guy is a deranged, Trump-hating information operative that is, he's got like 500,000 followers on X, formerly Twitter, and terrible engagement relative to his following. Let me see how many he has. Oh, he has nearly 1 million followers. Editor-in-Chief at Midas Touch, which is the most deranged Trump-hating organization. It is like the Lincoln Project and the Bulwark if you made everyone in those organizations part of the No Kings Gay Pride rally. So he says, we're at war with Iran. Trump's gone into hiding. Nobody will tell us our objectives, plan, or endgame. Our Secretary of Defense is a useless dipshit. Our Secretary of State lied about it. And our DNI loves the leader of Iran's greatest ally. And tomorrow we're having a parade for Trump's birthday. Is any of that true? Are we at war with Iran? No. Did Trump go into hiding? No. He just wasn't posting online and just wasn't feeding the narratives that these people were running. Okay? So he's gone, not taking credit. Rubio says they can't take credit. Then Trump seems like he took credit. Hey, I told you Iranians that this is going to happen if we didn't get the deal done. Now we got to get the deal done. And then he goes silent again. And we get the story about how Trump and Bibi tricked Iran. Don't get any refutation of that story. We don't get any of it. Their narratives aren't working. And so Ron Filipkowski is like, what's going on with our narratives? Then we have Trump on Saturday. President Putin called this morning to very nicely wish me a happy birthday, but to more importantly, talk about Iran, a country he knows very well. We talked at length. Much less time was spent talking about Russia, Ukraine, but that will be for next week. He is doing the planned prisoner swaps. Large numbers of prisoners are being exchanged immediately from both sides. The call lasted approximately 1 hour. he feels, as do I, this war in Israel, Iran should end, to which I explained his war should also end. Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, and eventually Erdogan, the Middle Eastern partners, and some others will be seen as the peacemakers in all of these situations. Putin wants to make peace between Israel and Iran. How about that? And also Putin backs Iran. And so we have Trump on the sort of Israel side and the Putin on the sort of Iran side, and they're going to make a deal for how to work all this stuff out, and then it'll be okay. Isn't that incredible? Trump and Putin, these great dictators and authoritarians and totalitarians and autocrats and all the rest of it, well, they're going to be the ones who finally bring peace to the world. Here is Donald Trump on Saturday night. And of course, the attacks continued, but he says the U.S. had nothing to do with the attack on Iran, tonight. If we are attacked in any way, shape, or form by Iran, the full strength and might of the U.S. armed forces will come down on you at levels never seen before. However, we can easily get a deal done between Iran and Israel and end this bloody conflict. So, nothing to do with the attacks on Iran on Saturday, but totally did it on Thursday and Friday. In fact, they did it so hard that Trump and Bibi got together to trick all the Middle Eastern partners in these negotiations so that Israel could successfully attack them. And then Trump could make a deal even after the regime, the uniparty media apparatus, told us that no nuclear deal could happen now that these attacks had occurred. It's all totally unbelievable. And you know what? This is what we're going to do. I'm going to leave a big segment of this for Wednesday, and we're going to end on this here article that I wrote over the weekend, or actually on Friday. I published it as an article. It was originally just going to be a social media post, but I've found that perhaps publishing these posts on Substack allows me a little bit more freedom because you don't have the length issues, and also allows for a little more permanence. And so I think that I'll probably expand this approach. Plus, it allows me to put out, to make the Substack membership valuable even when I'm not doing shows. And I think that I'm going to kind of gravitate more in that direction, fewer shows as we've talked about while I'm in a writing process, and maybe a reduction in the social media. So again, I would encourage people to follow on Substack. So let's go here to that article. The headline is Withhold Belief. Okay. I'm your moderator.substack.com. And I just started, what's the conclusive proof that a strike happened, right? And I provide screenshots from CNN, an article with the headline, Israel hits Iran's nuclear program and military leadership in unprecedented strikes. And then Axios, exclusive, U.S. fears Iran's response to Israeli strike would be mass casualty event. So far, we've seen nothing of the sort. Okay, so we're getting total nonsense headlines. What is the conclusive proof that a strike happened? How, after the last 5 years, do we just accept war stories as soon as the story runs? All week, people discuss the neocons and warmongers and how they're talking up events about to happen. Everyone understands the neocons and warmongers are full of shit, not to mention evil. Then, as soon as the TV says war, we all just believe everything the news says and start digging for the most minute details about how exactly the thing they said happened without even demanding proof that it happened. We understand false flags and neocon warmongering until the moment an event occurs, and immediately all the neocons and warmongers are telling the truth again. just like they did it on 9/11 and every other time. It's unbelievable. World War III is the enemy's desired outcome because then the enemy gets to systematically eliminate the courageous, patriotic men of every problem country, and we are one of those. They will call it civil war as they do it, and the history books will record us as having started it. The playbook is the playbook, and they have done this many times. They can only achieve their goals if they can convince people to want war, to want guns taken away, etc. That's the standard. They have to achieve that outcome. We could simply starve them for belief and remove their power completely, but we're too afraid to let go of the central narrative to the extent that it guides our understanding of reality. This is a spiritual problem that can't be solved with cheerleading for things on the internet and attempting to feel aligned with the powerful people on TV. At the very bottom, all that has happened is the TV showed us something, and now millions of Americans are trying to figure out who to kill en masse, totally consumed by their emotions. There is no way forward if we cannot stop being retarded. The news isn't fake just sometimes. It exists to exploit us and to convince us to welcome our exploitation. Withhold belief. That's all that's necessary. You don't have to call it fake. You don't have to ignore it. You can still investigate it if it makes you feel connected to the outside world. Believing that what's on TV is reality and what's happening around us in our real lives is less important than the TV reality is utterly insane, totally inverted. What's on TV is not reality at all. It's a story about reality told to exploit us, and we fall for it every time. It doesn't matter if the event is real or fake, almost definitely fake on some level. It matters whether we are able to abstain from doing what we're told to do and believing what we're told to believe. What is it we're clinging to? What is it we're clinging to? We are clinging to the central narrative. We are clinging to a version of reality by which we guide our lives. And we think that if that reality changes somehow, then our lives are simply going to fall apart. That's what the real fear is. And the truth is, it doesn't matter how long that fear persists. The only solution is to let it go. Okay? There's no way that we are ever going to bomb the rest of the world into the place where those fears go away. All right? There's no worldly solution to that problem. There's no set of circumstances that is going to change that's going to make that not a problem anymore. Okay? We have to let go that the things that we thought we knew about our country and about politics and the rest of it represent reality in reality prime. They don't represent reality. The weapon is our belief. Our belief is being weaponized. Okay? You remove the enemy's weapon by withholding belief from them, because then nothing can be accomplished. And we will end here. This story, wow, maybe the tweet's been taken down. That's really something. Okay, give me just a brief second to pull up my post from Telegram, because that has the graphic and it has my commentary about it. But let's just focus on the graphic here. This is from Jennifer Griffin, Fox News's resident military-industrial complex mouthpiece, right? One of the most purely untrustworthy women I've ever seen. But here she goes. The USS Nimitz aircraft carrier strike group is on its way to the Middle East from the South China Sea, a U.S. official tells Fox News. So an unnamed official tells Jennifer Griffin at Fox News. The Nimitz was previously scheduled to replace the USS Carl Vinson Carrier Strike Group, which has been deployed for several months, but is now heading to the Middle East ahead of schedule. The two will now be in the Middle East at the same time. The Nimitz is the oldest active aircraft carrier in the U.S. Navy, commissioned on May 3rd, 1975. Scheduled to be decommissioned in 2026, this is possibly its final sea voyage. This is a very significant symbolic deployment because it was deployed in 1980, and its helicopters that were part of the failed U.S. effort known as Operation Eagle Claw to rescue the American hostages being held at the U.S. Embassy in Tehran. The U.S. has been in a shadow war against Iran ever since. Have we? Or has the global regime used us as the avatar of their war against a faction in Iran? So the symbolic meaning, let's focus on that. Optics only. We are already in the realm of optics. This is a storytelling adventure to the extent that it's happening at all. This is, by the way, the Nimitz is, by the way, the ship featured in the movie The Final Countdown that Burning Bright and I just covered with retired Lieutenant Colonel Oakland McCullough just a couple of weeks ago on Badlands Story Hour. Interesting timing. Just saying, interesting timing. Maybe Oak had a premonition and let us know about that, and that's why we scheduled it that time. I don't know. But so the ship is supposed to be commissioned, not used anymore, and it's being sent over to the Middle East. There are people who believe that it is going to be destroyed in a USS Liberty-style false flag attack by the Israelis, and then that is meant to then draw us into war. So, word to the wise, when you see that sort of thing happen, and the TV tells you the story about what happened, understand you're being hoodwinked. There's no other option other than you're being hoodwinked. There's not an option where it's a real thing, that this real act of war has started, and now we need to go to war. You're only being hoodwinked. It is only the false flag. And with that, I'm going to save the rest of what I had lined up for tomorrow. For Wednesday. I did not expect that the Escalator Delta, the Eric Trump and Tucker Carlson appearances on War Room this morning were A, going to happen, and B, warrant so much time. But I'm glad that we went through those. I'm checking the chat one last time before I get out of here. Thank you all very much for hanging out. Thank you for devoting your time and your energy and your resources toward this effort. I am trying my damnedest to make this thing work and deliver to you the promise of what this show has been now for nearly 5 years. And it could not continue without your support. Well, the podcast has been over 5 years. By the end of August, I will be 5 years on the constant weekly podcasts away from the very sporadic interview-oriented podcasts. Although maybe we'll go back to that at some point. But anyway, the point is I couldn't do it without your support. I thank you all very much. Thank you for watching on YouTube. Thank you for watching on Substack, though that got short-circuited, and Getter and Telegram and whatever else it's broadcasting on. Thank you all very much. And I will be back Wednesday for the subscriber stream. You have to be a paid subscriber on Substack to join that stream. I will send out the information on Wednesday with the private link for Rumble if you have Rumble Premium, and otherwise you just watch on Substack. It'll be set up that only paid subscribers can view it. I'll be back on Wednesday at the same reasonable time on the same reasonable podcast network. I don't have a network. Masks and lockdowns don't work. They lied to you about a pandemic, and Joe Biden was never president.
Well,
what?
You know who I am, don't you?
Well, you ain't Fiona Apple, and if you ain't Fiona Apple, I don't give a rat's ass.
What's wrong with being an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times? What do you think, Max?
Do you want to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times?
Yeah, I think I'd like to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times.
It's not true. It's more
true than I would perhaps prefer.
Can we stop this cruel game and allow the boy to keep one shred of dignity? For God's sakes, I can't stand to see him in all this pain. You vicious bastards! Let him move in with you. Is it so bad to see somebody happy? So just let him move in. For the love of God, let the boy move in with you. Good Lord.
And I will not let you down.
We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling.
What must be what? In my mind, that's the end game.
If you're listening for free and would like to support the show, the best way to do that is by signing up for a paid subscription at imyourmoderator.substack.com. You can find the info stream over on Telegram at t.me/veryreasonable. The merch site is cancelcouture.com, and for all my other links, you can visit linktree.com/imyourmoderator. And I'll see you soon. Down on the range.